You know, I think we're headed towards a civil war. And you know why I say it right off the bat? Audio has leaked of a Republican in Arizona trying to bribe Kari Lake, offering her a lucrative position at some company if she drops out of the Senate race. He says in this audio recording that the election in Arizona was stolen, secret recording. And he says at the end, in a manner of speaking, if they find out, if this goes public, if he releases this information, he will be assassinated. What he literally says is, I will put my key in my car and, as if to imply they will murder him if he reveals what's actually going on behind the scenes. Presumably, Kari Lake herself recorded this audio. I don't know for sure. The audio has been released and we can listen to it. It's been published by many news outlets, and they say that they've reached out to members of the GOP in Arizona who have confirmed it is in fact a member of the GOP who's doing this. So we'll get into all the details on it. And the reason why I bring up Civil War stuff is I could not imagine in my lifetime the powers that be losing such control that audio is released of them attempting to bribe someone running for office into bowing out. These are things of myth and legend we can only speculate towards. We know something happened behind the scenes. We know something was wrong with those voting machines in Arizona. And now there's an actual recording for 10 minutes where a guy's saying, maybe there's a company, we can get you some money, just disappear for a few years. What's the number? This stuff's crazy. And there's other reasons why I say civil war. First, let's get through the weeds on this one. Trump was already projected the winner of the New Hampshire primaries. That's why I really don't care about it. It is interesting. In this story, we actually have Democrats being interviewed saying they are literally Democrats voting for Nikki Haley to sabotage the Republican primary and then go vote for Joe Biden. Not kidding. I'll play the video for you. But this is not news. I mean, it is. It's interesting. Oh, okay. Oh, hey, look, Trump won. Trump has already been projected to win. But we'll see. We'll see. Very, very few of the votes are in. And some are concerned this is a trick so that Trump voters leave and don't vote. So make sure you stick around and you vote. But the next major issue is that following the Supreme Court ruling in Texas that the feds have the authority to remove razor wire, not only did Texas announce that they will not back down, they will not allow feds to remove the razor wire, they actually just brought more in. That is why I say, wow, civil war. The uniparty establishment machine is losing a grip on its control and its power. The Epstein stuff somehow gets released to the public. These deep backdoor conspiracies are being exposed. Their power is their grip is slipping. And now we have actual conflict between states and the federal government. We're going to talk about all that. Before we get started, my friends, head over to castbrew.com. Buy Cast Brew coffee. It's our coffee company. We sponsor ourselves. And when you buy Cast Brew, you're supporting this show, the work we do. And of course, if you buy Alex Stein's Primetime Grind 2 times caffeine, which is our latest release, you're also helping cats because Alex has requested that his portion of the sales will go to a cat charity. And we're excited to get that rolling out. But we're going to, wait till the end of the month, get the total number, and then announce how much we're going to be putting towards a cat charity because Alex really likes cats. But make sure you check out Cast Brew Coffee. We've got Rise with Roberto Jr. Now, I'm sorry to say that the Appalachian Nights ground and K-Cups totally sold out. Whole bean is still available, but man, this stuff is so popular. I'm eternally grateful for everybody who's buying it. They really do love it. That's the blend that I put together that I personally liked, and it's gone. Even here, it's like everybody goes for that one first. So if you want to support the show, buy from castbrew.com, support our work, but also head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member, and you'll get access to our members only uncensored shows coming up tonight at 10 p.m., Monday through Thursday, we have them at 10 p.m. And you'll also get access to our Discord server where you can hang out with like-minded individuals. They have pre-shows, they've got after shows, commentary, and as a member, you can actually call into the Uncensored Show to talk to us and our guests. So get involved, man. Support our work directly over at timcast.com. But don't forget to also smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and everything else is Derrick Evans.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Right on. Who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, my name is Derrick Evans. I'm married to my college sweetheart. Been together about 15 years. Have 4 kids. Most people know me as the state legislator in West Virginia who went to the Capitol on January 6th to peacefully and patriotically protest the stolen election and got arrested, thrown in prison, and now I'm running for Congress.
Well, right on. Should be interesting. You'll have some good insights, I suppose, on how all that stuff is going down, especially as we're talking about the Kari Lake stuff. So thanks for hanging out.
Yeah.
We got Hannah Claire hanging out.
Hey, I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for ASSASSINATION. I think it's hilarious that you lead with, I'm married to my college sweetheart. Good family values. I like to start the show that way. Speaking of family values, one of my favorite moms is in the room. Hi, Libby.
Hey, I just want to say, this is Libby Emmons. The Wall Street Journal and the New York Times have both already called it for Trump. They both said that Trump wins the New Hampshire GOP primary.
Nikki Haley, we'll get into this, but
Yeah.
Nikki Haley is going to use the numbers to say it is not over, even though they're not Republicans voting for
Right. Well, she is pretty, she does, it's 54 to 45. So she's actually closer than people thought she might be, but it's 18% of the votes are in. So just like with Iowa, they called it way early.
Yep.
And this is Libby Emmons. I'm with the Post Millennial.
And I am Serge.com with Timcast IRL, and I hope you guys enjoy the show. Be a good one.
All right, let's jump into this big news. Ladies and gentlemen, breaking, post-millennial. Arizona GOP chair tried to bribe Kari Lake to not run for Senate, leaked audio. He told Lake people were willing to put their money where their mouth is. I mean, the audio from this is absolutely nuts. He says things like, very powerful people don't want you to run. Quote, there are very powerful people who want to keep you out, he told Lake in a conversation last March. Jeff DeWitt told her that the people were willing to put their money where their mouth is. This is about defeating Trump. And I think that's a bad thing for our country, she replied. These people are corrupt. It's about control. After Lake asked what the powerful people wanted from her, he said, they want you to stay out for 2 years. I'll tell you what I can offer you. DeWitt continued, saying that there were companies that could, quote, just put her on the payroll to keep her out of the Senate race in the state. When Lake pushed back against the idea, DeWitt asked, just say, is there a number at which? Lake cut in saying, I can be bought? That's what it's about. After insisting to Lake that she could have a bigger voice in politics and to take the offer of the bribe, Lake said that doing so would be immoral and she wouldn't be able to look at herself in the mirror the same. DeWitt insisted that Lake not tell anyone the conversation happened. Now, it's a 10-minute recording. I don't want to play everything, but I do want to play the end part where he fears assassination. But I also want to point out, in it, he mentions, you can be a big personality. You can be a big voice. It is about defeating Donald Trump. That's why they want her out for 2 years. They want Trump to lose. After that, then you can do whatever you want. Let me play the last portion of this, and you can hear it for yourself. This stuff's wild. And okay, let me refresh because X video always does that. And let's try again.
What's about DeSantis, getting DeSantis in? Getting DeSantis is getting Trump out.
You're reading too deep into it.
Well, let's see what happens. Maybe my case will go through. Maybe they'll do the right thing.
I hope so.
I do too. That's my first goal. But they can't have me in the governor's office because then we're going to root out some of this corruption.
But again, it's like...
You know what it is? The people don't get to choose their elected officials unless they're pre-approved by the swamp. And the swamp doesn't pre-approve of me.
You need a strong party to help
I think
win.
you should go public with this and then say, hey,
No.
these people don't want to, they don't want,
And then I turn my key in my car and I just... I like my car.
Then I turn my key in my car and it goes... Very powerful people sent this man to bribe Kari Lake into dropping out because they want their pre-approved candidates to be put in place and they were going to pay her off so that she would stop trying. And this man says if he goes public, they will kill him with a car bomb. Now, maybe he doesn't literally mean car bomb, but no. Then I turn my key in my car and I think the implication is very, very obvious. Who are these powerful people? You know, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you guys. We've been swatted several times. I know there are crazy people out there. People ask me if I'm ever concerned about my safety, and I always say I'm less concerned with Antifa than I am with the crazy man who thinks I broke into his house to steal all of his spoons. Crazy people see you and they say crazy things. I don't know anyone that I fear in the immediate would try to kill me. And I don't know if anyone else here or anyone's been on the show would in the immediate say someone will kill me if I do a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is a guy who's saying, if I take this action, they will kill me. He knows who they are. He knows the powerful people that have put him up to this. He knows them. Someone sent him there. And he thinks, if I cross them, they'll kill me. Who's he working with?
Well, it's crazy. It's fascinating because we hear about, the deep state, the swamp, all these things. We hear about these kind of conversations taking place in politics. And then here we are, we get a firsthand, listen to this. And so it's one thing to hear about it. I think it's totally different when you actually listen to the video and you hear that. It kind of put it in a new context for me, and I'm sure many others out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's only breeding more distrust in the system that's already there. And I think in some ways, the political theater has gotten so dramatic that people really equate it to what was that show that had Frank on it, and like all these DC sort of not like dramedies
House of
where it's
Cards,
like House of Cards. Thank you. They think anything could happen, but then things like this come out and they say, "Oh,
it's all real.
It's all real."
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately plays into sort of this elite group's power, right? They want you to be scared.
Well,
Hey, nobody ever came here and offered me a bunch of money for any of this stuff. What's going on?
If this is what's going on, then we have a situation in American politics that is a real problem. This is what we see in Russia. We see this kind of thing in Ukraine. We see this kind of thing where people are just taken out. You never hear from them again in China. If we have a situation where we have political operatives operating behind the scenes to take people out if they do a misstep, then I think most Americans would not be prepared for that reality.
It sounds like Kari Lake recorded this because of the volume of her voice and the volume of Jeff's voice. I'm wondering why it is it took this long for it to get released.
Maybe she just now felt comfortable doing it. I don't know, but it's crazy too because this is Kari Lake. This isn't some no-name politician. So the fact that they felt comfortable enough to go to someone like Kari Lake and have that conversation, what are they doing to other people that's just coming in
Desperate
DC?
Enough.
Yeah, desperate enough. That's a good point.
That's why I was saying in the intro to the show tonight, Civil War. Oh, you better be careful because I'm going to say that a lot tonight with what's going on. They're so panicked and desperate over what Kari Lake represents. She is America First. She is like Trump. And they're probably thinking, we nip this in the bud now. Because if she actually advances politically in this country, we are dealing with Trump once again. This time, I'll be completely honest, Kari Lake is a bit more, what's the right word? Orthodox? I mean,
a little more poised, maybe?
Poised is maybe the right word. Trump is a brash celebrity character, and they find ways to use that to make him look bad. But Kari Lake has decades of television experience, and she comes off like top tier, political, high level, like poised, I suppose is probably the best way to put it. That is something they will struggle with. Mm-hmm. If she is running for higher office, if she is succeeding, if she's in the Senate, they're not going to be able to stop her. Trump gives them some ammunition sometimes, and they're going as dirty as possible. Right now, we know what comes next for Kari Lake. Because in conspiracy world, it goes like this. The first thing they do is they ask you to play ball. Hey, we really like what you're doing. Why don't you come work with us? And then you say, no, I'm not interested. I don't like what you do. Then they offer you money. Okay. Hey, I got this really great opportunity. Why don't you take this job in this other place? When you refuse the money, the next step is the threats. The next thing that happens is maybe there's a car accident. A family member has an unfortunate turn, and we would hate for that to happen. In the conspiracy world, typically it goes with recruitment, failure, bribery, failure, threats of violence, and assassination. And we've talked about that book, was it Confessions of an Economic Hitman, where he talks about on the larger scale, basically you go to a country, you say, you are now part of our machine and our empire. And if they say no, Then you offer them a bunch of money and say, hey, we'll give you all these things. They say no. Then you stage a coup and remove them from power and install someone who will do what you want them to do.
It's like that Monty Python sketch when they're like, "That was a nice country you've got here. It'd be a shame something happened to it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine with the release of this audio and the man being recorded saying, effectively, they will kill him. Kari Lake, man, she needs to she got to hire some security for her family.
Well, if they weren't scared of her before, I'm sure they are now. Because I mean, she says in the audio, like, "You're going to have to kill me. You're not going to buy me. You're not going to pay me off." And so she stood up to this. And so I think if they weren't scared of her before, they probably definitely are now.
I fear they will. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, the sheer desperation we are seeing from the political elites in this country is not beyond any of that right now. Look, it is allegedly a conspiracy theory that Epstein killed himself. What I mean is the mainstream media purports that not a single real person in this country believes Epstein killed himself.
That interview with his brother was really pretty shocking.
The best line ever came from Chris Reagan, YouTube personality. After it happened, he said he got into an Uber and the first thing that happens is the driver turns around and goes, "Yo, that guy didn't kill himself." Nobody believes it. Epstein himself and his story was a conspiracy theory. Now we know, now it's a fact. Ghislaine Maxwell's in jail, proven, and they still haven't released the client list. Now that we're starting to see beyond the curtain that these things are happening, now that we actually got leaked audio of someone trying to bribe Kari Lake, I will say right now, I'm just going to go ahead and assume all the rest of it's true. The funny thing is, people have been saying for some time, like 2 years now, conspiracy theory, what is Luke's got a shirt, conspiracy theories are just spoiler alerts.
Right.
6 months.
It's true.
It happened with all of them, and it happened in such quick succession. You know, it was like getting whiplash. Everything that we were told was true was a complete lie. And now we see, you know, you'll see a lot of conversations bubbling up about the way that history has been taught. And we're suddenly realizing, oh, they taught us X, Y, and Z about our national history. And if you dig into it, it turns out those things weren't true either. I had a professor in grad school who went through, a whole bunch of stuff. He was like a Cuban refugee as a child, and he was brought to Florida and all this stuff. And when things would happen and we'd talk about history, he'd be like, "Listen, that's not how it happened. That's not how it happened at all." And he'd start explaining what it looked like, you know, from his perspective, having lived through it. But we're seeing that all over the place. And it's just compounding. It's hard to have any idea where to put your foot that's going to be solid ground.
And I think it's changing forms too.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of it just being, oh, well, this is how I was taught this in high school. I mean, I remember being taught stuff and being like, this obvious has bias to it. But now it's also sort of these historically based miniseries that Netflix puts out. And they're actually slightly inaccurate. But that's where a lot of people are learning kind of the gist of what happened, or they think the gist of what happened during various points of time. It ultimately becomes plausible deniability for anyone in the media who gets to be like, oh, well, we took some creative liberties here. But, you know, we don't have a strong enough and unbiased education system to say, here's what you need to know, and you can watch this and discern where they are taking sort of a political leap and where this is actually what happened.
The entire concept of deconstruction that started in philosophy has now just hit reality. Mm-hmm. We're deconstructing everything every day.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point about everything kind of speeding up, I feel like they never expected President Trump to win in 2016. It kind of threw a wrench in their globalist agenda and their plan.
Remember everybody crying the next day, like literally sobbing?
And since then, everything has kind of just been in overdrive and it's speeding everything up. And I really think the left has overplayed their hand with a lot of this, though. I mean, you know, back to, you know, the lockdowns and the mandates and all that. And what we saw from that were parents were at home listening to what was going on inside the classrooms and all these other things. And so I feel like they overplayed their hand. A lot of people have woken up to this. I mean, if you go back 7, 8 years, not even 10, I mean, 7, 8 years and tell everybody what took place over the last few years, they would say you're crazy. There's no way that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And here we are living in it.
Yeah. I mean, but you don't remember people crying, right? Because you're from West Virginia.
That's right.
Which had, I mean, there really are states and cities that had completely different experiences.
Yep.
Trump coming to office was something that a lot of people celebrated very intensely. But, you know, you were, in Brooklyn at the time?
I was actually, it was pretty crazy. My friends were sobbing. Mm-hmm. And I didn't vote for Trump, but I wasn't sobbing. I was like, oh, now we have a different president, and I'm going to support the president because I'm an American. That's what I do.
Well, I was saying if Nikki Haley won tonight in New Hampshire, I'd be laughing my ass off.
That'd be hysterical.
It'd be funny. Let's jump to this. So we did not lead with the New Hampshire primary news, despite the fact that some had already called the race for Trump. But now we have officially numerous outlets have called New Hampshire for Donald Trump. That's not the big story, however. Of course, Donald Trump won. I don't see any plausible scenario. Like, there's no reason for these primaries except Democrats are trying to look, man. I have so much disdain for these people that scream democracy while publicly stating their intention to destroy our institutions and even the concept of democratic representation, meaning we democratically elect a representative in our republic. Here's the story. Take a look at this. So there's Dave Wasserman calling it for Trump. I want to play this clip. Nuance Bro has the tweet from CNN. Democrats are voting for Nikki Haley tonight in New Hampshire. They're Biden supporters. Check this.
Nikki Haley.
And why did you vote for Nikki Haley?
It's a vote against Trump. I think it would be better to have her against Biden in the elections than it would be Trump and her.
Do you consider yourself generally independent, Republican, or Democrat?
Democrat.
So when you undeclared, you voted for Nikki Haley. If it was Nikki Haley against Joe Biden in a general election, who are you voting for?
Joe Biden.
What is the...
They outright have no scruples. They have no morals. That is like, look, I say the banality of evil a lot, but this is why I've been saying civil war, man. The process be damned to these people. Republicans keep playing this game of look how magnanimous we are. And the Democrats keep laughing and trying to knife them in the back. Here's a guy who's saying, your party's process means nothing to me. I will vote for the worst candidate imaginable, knowing Republicans will not vote for, so that when I vote for Joe Biden, I can win. What form of government would you call that? If Joe Biden wins under those circumstances, what form of government would this man call that? It's not democracy. It's not a republic. I don't know what you'd call it.
I don't either.
It's a system of governance where one faction sabotages the other to install a minority, massively unpopular candidate. Joe Biden's popular. What was his approval rating in the 30s?
It's like 33% the last time I looked. It was like extremely
This guy's
low.
a fascist.
Is it a fascist? Is it? I've been sort of weighing. Is it authoritarian? Is it totalitarian? Is
Yes.
it fascist?
It literally is.
That's exactly what it is. It's the kind of thing that people who have no faith in the system of government that they live in would do.
And no faith in Joe Biden, right? He doesn't actually think Joe Biden could match up against
Well, he
Trump.
doesn't think, yeah, that's a really
So
good point.
he's trying to say, we have to get Nikki Haley in there to help Biden out, because if it's a Biden-Trump mashup, I mean, he's not saying it, but the
Right.
subtext there is Biden will get defeated by Trump.
There are a substantial number of polls, I think, where Trump leads Biden in the general.
Yeah, multiple out there right now.
Yeah.
And it's amazing though how the left, they're so fascist all in the name of anti-fascist. And then, they're so intolerant all in the name of tolerance. It's amazing and fascinating how their minds work and what they do. And then, Tim keeps mentioning, potential civil war. And I unfortunately have to agree. I think we're headed to that direction. I hope we don't. But you got to think back. But prior to the last civil war, that's when the Democrats were removing people from the ballot. Then they removed Abraham Lincoln from the ballot leading up to the Civil War. Now they're trying to do the same thing to President Trump.
That's a misconception. The idea of ballots being publicly created and given out is a new phenomenon that did not exist at the time of the Civil War. What happened was typically the parties would create their ballots. Here are our candidates, give them out to people and say, you can basically sign it and drop in the ballot. This is who you're voting for. So it was a party line ballot. In, I believe it was 10 Democrat states, Republicans did not issue ballots because it wasn't so. There were two big reasons. One, they thought it was a waste of time and energy. You are not going to win in these slave states that opposed Abraham Lincoln.
Money.
But a big factor was that they were concerned that anyone who supported the Republican Party and the abolition of slavery in these states who was seen carrying a ballot would be shunned, at worst, beaten. Considering we were in the bleeding Kansas era, where you had people like John Brown shooting people in the face, no one's going to be seen carrying an Abraham Lincoln ballot in the southern states. So they were just not released by the party.
They just had the population so fearful partly to even do that because they were afraid of what the other Democrats would do to them if they were to support somebody who was against slavery.
Not a single vote was cast for Abraham Lincoln
crazy.
In the states that went on to secede. Nobody would be caught dead doing it.
Wow.
Because then you would be dead. So it's, not the same as not having, having someone removed from the ballot. But because of that, people have misconstrued it to Democrats removed them from the ballot. Yeah, they didn't have ballots back then. They had party line ballots. So I fact checked all that, and it's I think it's actually to a certain degree more worrying as to I think it was worse back then. The fear that people are killing each other. You had Bleeding Kansas for 7 years, where people were just showing up and shooting each other. John Brown walks up to a guy, blasts him in the face, just kills him. No questions, doesn't care. That's crazy.
It is.
Where we're at now, Aaron Danielson was walking down the street. And Michael Reinl walked up to him and blasted him in the chest. 2 bullets killing him. Just because.
Yep.
And so it's fascinating to me that we're in an era where these stories could absolutely begin. But, back to this stuff. Democrats are publicly admitting there are no elections. That guy going on CNN and admitting this. Other Democratic candidates saying that they've shut down our primaries so we can't vote. Marianne Williamson, and I think Dean Phillips?
Dean Phillips.
Yeah,
Yep.
Dean Phillips.
Of Minnesota.
That's right.
And I got word spit with this guy. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. Marianne Williamson I like. They're saying why are we being barred from the primary? Why is this not being allowed? Because the Uniparty is in control. Their fascist zealots like that man are going to make sure there is no election. They will subvert it through every loophole imaginable so that the least popular candidate wins, all while screaming it's everybody else who's a fascist.
Well, didn't they also steal the primary from Bernie Sanders back in 2016?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's just nothing they've done this before.
The thing,
who they
too,
are.
is like the Democrats refused to go into New Hampshire. They tried to push them to do South Carolina instead.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it looked like there were going to be contenders, they launched a write-in campaign, even though Biden's not on the ballot. And, that's incredibly rude, too. That's like a definitely take your cake and eat it, too situation. And Biden has 73% of that. Phillips has 20% right now.
With how much in? I mean, I'm looking at
31%. 31%.
Yeah.
So as for this Phillips guy, he's got this video where he's complaining to the press saying, you won't cover my story. You're not asking the right questions. He's like, Biden can't win. I am trying to do this. Why won't you tell the right story? Laura Loomer shows up.
Mm-hmm.
She had showed up to a Marianne Williamson event.
Yep.
Totally respectfully saying, I agree with you. You are right. It is wrong what they're doing. They threw her out.
Yep.
So this guy wants to claim, the media, they won't cover my story. Well, now you've got someone with a massive platform who is not here to berate you, but to actually amplify your message, and you throw her out. And it's because they're like, we want to make sure we look good to the press. The press that won't actually, these people are
and then Marianne Williamson gave her a microphone to basically, and you could see Laura wasn't there to cause any issues. She was truly there as a journalist.
This is why we like Marianne Williamson.
Yeah.
Marianne Williamson was like, welcome. Yes, please. There you go. Have fun. And they agreed. And Marianne Williamson was like, I thought you were going to ask me about how they're doing this, that, and just went off on them. And I'm like, good. But people like Dean Phillips, he wants to win the Democratic primary. What he really wants is for the corporate press to acknowledge him. That's what he's complaining about. Laura Loomer doesn't count. He doesn't care about her. He doesn't care about what her followers or the average person might think. He wants the New York Times to acknowledge that he's running. And he's so frustrated. I don't understand why they won't. Perhaps it's because your party is run by fascists and they are corrupt. Unsurprising. But that's what you get. And this is where we're headed right now. So, my view of this is if people have said this could be the last election. In fact, we have a book right here. Look, it's just because we have all these things just lying around. Hey, shout out to Stephen Marsh, who gets cited on this show so often, despite the fact we agree on a lot of things. He's researched and written about Civil War. He wrote a book with Andrew Yang called The Last Election. I think he's wrong, though. This isn't the last election. The last election was 2016.
Oh, you think so? You think we already saw the last legitimate election?
I think you could technically argue that the last election was 2012.
Interesting.
Agreed.
2016, Democrats claimed it was stolen and Russia stole it, and then they tried to destroy Donald Trump. False impeachments.
They claimed it was stolen for 4 years.
The whole time.
It's okay when they do it, though. It's okay when they do it.
Well, because
did we actually have an election in 20? Did we actually have an
election
election in 2016 if half the country's political forces disrupted the administration? 2020. Well, the right doesn't think that was legitimate. Did we have an election then? No. 2016 was disputed by the Democrats. 2020 is disputed by the Republicans. And right now, Democrats are actively admitting They are actively sabotaging and admitting to sabotaging the 2024 election in every way, from the Democratic primary to the Republican primary. They are saying to our faces, they are going to burn the system to the ground. There's no election.
Well, did you see at his like pro-abortion themed rally in Virginia today, Joe Biden opened up by going, "Hello, Virginia," and hello to the real governor of Virginia, Terry McAfee.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but it's like if Trump had done that in a state where it had been a contentious election, everyone would be like, "Election denier." And I know there are some Republicans doing that now. McAuliffe, thank you.
I was like, McAfee?
It's like when I'm writing it, I switch all the letters around. Shout out to Chris Carr for being a great editor. But there is this moment where it's sort of more brazen. It's okay when we do it, and it seems to be escalating. And this is the same rally where there were like 14 interruptions by pro-Palestine protesters there were 4 in the first 5 minutes. So there is discord all around, but there's definitely a moment, in my opinion, where people who vote Democrat are sort of looking at the party and saying, do we believe you and do we represent you? And do you actually know what we want out of you? And I think in some ways, the interesting part about Trump's candidacy is it was a reckoning of there is a huge population in this U.S. who wants certain things like border security. Mm-hmm. They want you to address the fentanyl crisis. They want you to take on certain issues that, to be fair, the Republican sort of old guard just didn't take seriously because it didn't seem to affect them.
They didn't take it seriously, and I think the American leftists didn't take it seriously. They didn't think that it's like that we have a total disconnect in, again, the nature of reality here, and we do in so many cases. You have a bunch of people in the United States saying that men are women. That's just insane. It's obviously insane. You have Joe Biden saying that the border is closed and that Congress needs to do something to act to close the border. But everyone knows full well that Congress has absolutely no power right now, right? I mean, even if Congress passed something, the Senate's not going to take it up. Joe Biden would not sign any bill that actually closed the border. It just would not happen.
Yeah, but I will say this, though. The Democrats, and I despise what they stand for, but they actually fought for what they believe in. They have shut this country down before. And, we have a bunch of, in my opinion, spineless jellyback rhinos representing us in Congress right now who are just continuing.
Can you just say that again?
Spineless jellyback rhinos. And they continue to just give them whatever they want instead of holding the line. It's like our country's being invaded right now. Who cares if we end up shutting the border down in order to secure funding for that or to close the border in some way?
Let's jump to the story from the Post-Millennial. Texas installs more razor wire on Eagle Pass border after Supreme Court said Biden could remove it. Texas will not back down from our efforts to secure the border in Biden's absence. I was thinking about the Civil War earlier today, and Fort Sumter, the start of the Civil War, we say Fort Sumter. And then there's the first Battle of Bull Run or the Battle of Manassas. And I'm thinking, I wonder if in 100 years they're going to say the first battle at Eagle Pass, or they're going to say Eagle Pass was the start of the Second Civil War. I don't know. It could just, we can't see the future. It'll be hindsight being 2020. 100 years from now, they're going to look back and who knows? They could say the 2020 election. They could say January 6th. They could say a lot of things. But right now, what we're looking at is an escalation of what is effectively a Fort Sumter-esque moment. I said it was literally Fort Sumter, and Ian got mad and he said, no, it's figuratively because they're not actually there. And I'm like, no, I am saying it is literally the circumstances of Fort Sumter. In this instance, the federal government has asserted its jurisdiction on a border. However, it is facilitating criminal actions. Customs and Border Protection agents are committing crimes, serious humanitarian violations and criminal activities. Texas is trying to stop them, deploying armed soldiers. I think people should understand. It's fascinating when I talk about Civil War several years ago, and people are like, you really think there's going to be like armed soldiers marching against the federal government?
It turns out.
Texas deployed armed National Guard to push out the feds who have went to the Supreme Court, asserted their jurisdiction here, and Texas said, F off.
And
what does the federal government do?
Well, as long as Texas is going to hold the line, which I think is awesome, and I support them doing that, I think that we need to encourage more red states to follow suit, like West Virginia, for instance, Ohio, Kentucky. Send in the National Guard as well to give them some backup right now.
You think we should send in the National Guard to Texas?
Well, Texas's National Guard is there. Right. I believe if they're going to hold the line on this issue of our country being invaded right now, I would love to see West Virginia send ours in there to send backup.
That's such a huge escalation.
Yeah, well, I think that that's warranted at this point.
You have no idea what I would do if I was the governor of West Virginia.
Same. That's what if I was in charge, I would. I'm not talking 10 people to get a headline. I would send the National Guard down there, and I would encourage my surrounding states to do the same.
And governors have done this in the past.
I would instruct the West Virginia National Guard to seize the CBP facility over on 340. We know for a fact CBP agents, they're on camera smuggling humans.
Children.
Sex trafficking,
It is insane to me. There was a video I showed earlier where someone actually interviewed one of these agents as they're facilitating human smuggling, working with cartels. And they go, well, it's crazy. They're letting them in. And the guy, I don't know who actually produced the video. He says, it's strange because when they say they're being allowed in, it's CBP who's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a facility over in West Virginia, not too far away from here, a massive CBP facility.
I didn't know this. I didn't know that.
Oh,
Massive.
it's right over there. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, how could anyone work? I don't care if you're slinging coffee.
Yeah.
We know for a fact that CBP agents are engaged in human trafficking right now, children working with cartels, breaking the law, and are staging. They are the villains, the bad guys fighting against the sovereignty and the law. And there are people in West Virginia who are like, it's my job.
Yeah.
It's my job. Oh, well, you're a scumbag.
But I think this question of how will we remember this period of history is really interesting. Like you were saying, are we going to look back at this and say, is this the Battle of Eagle Pass? To me, it reminds me more of the standoff at Ruby Ridge, right? There was a time when we saw the federal government being aggressive and we waited to see what would happen. In this case,
Ruby Ridge was a handful of people.
But what I'm saying is it's interesting to look back and say, at the time, the federal government said we're justified in what we're doing. And we look back and say, like, was that the correct thing to do? Will we look back at the border, people who don't necessarily see illegal immigration as a problem, and will they look back at it and say,
regret it?
Yeah. Will they say, oh, we should have let the razor wire stay? We know why Texas is. We understand this now because we live with the consequences of those actions.
Well, and this is why this is not a time for weak politicians. I mean, it really isn't. This is a time where we need some patriots to get involved in politics. We have too many politicians in politics because a politician is not going to send in the National Guard from West Virginia, Ohio, or Kentucky, but a patriot, someone like Kari Lake, because she was in charge of Arizona right now. I guarantee you their National Guard would be doing the same thing right now at the Arizona border.
Well, that was one of her campaign promises.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think West Virginia state governance should immediately have an investigation into the CBP facility.
Yes.
They should be subpoenaing records. They should be getting warrants. They should be going through all their documents. To what degree is the CBP in West Virginia working with or facilitating the trafficking that's happening at the border? Because we know, and I'm wondering how much this affects West Virginia, we know that CBP is bringing these people to airports, to bus charters, and having them sent around the country. In an interview, one of these guys says they're given a $2,000 or $3,000 gift card.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're given accommodation and places to sleep. I do not believe West Virginia is not one of these destinations. I think it is extremely likely these people are being sent here to the extent that they can be due to infrastructure. I think the fact that we know and have seen on video, and you can go down there and witness it for yourself, that CBP agents are engaged in human trafficking, that's more than enough probable cause for the legal apparatus of West Virginia to go in with a bunch of guys in police jackets and start ripping through those documents to figure out what it is CBP is doing and why they're doing it. I think anybody who works for CBP at this point who hasn't resigned over this is a scumbag.
Well, and let me just say, if our West Virginia elected legislators and elected officials are not going to do that, then they should everyone be primaried and kicked out of office, because if they don't have the courage to step up and do that when it's happening in our state, because everybody loves to sit back and say, oh, this is happening over in another. This is happening. I didn't know this is happening in West Virginia. This is crazy to me because I'm on the other side of the
we don't know what is happening.
Well, I mean that there was a facility there, I should say. I didn't know this. And so I agree. I think that at the very least there should be some proper investigations into that. We know there's 85,000 missing children that we know of right now.
Well, and there's got to be more than that, right? Because
exactly.
There's a rule, and this was like a judge who said that it was like the Flores settlement, this whole thing. So basically, like, a judge said that children need to be released, unaccompanied minors need to be released. They can't be held without, for like a very long time or whatever. And they were very displeased with the conditions that children were being held in. So it was like, okay, the children have to be released. Children would be released. There'd be sponsors, etc. DHS doesn't even know who the sponsors are. There's no vetting. And then after, and this was like in when was the Flores thing? It was like in the 90s or something like that, but it keeps coming up. And then Obama took the Flores settlement and was like, okay, well, we're going to have to separate the kids from the adults. And that's how family separation started. You separate the kids from the adults so that the kids would be released, but you wouldn't be releasing the adults. And then this, it comes up again, and it turns out now you have to release the adults with the children if they come across, and it creates this golden ticket situation, and you don't even know who the adults are. And you have so many reporters have gone down and reported on the border, showing that people before they cross the border, they'll ditch their ID documents.
Yeah, they show them laying there around the border.
There's
and people need to remember, your tax dollars are paying for our own government. You're aiding and abetting the child sex trafficking of children
They're doing
in our country right now.
It's
crazy.
When you look at the effect and the impact, you can only start to believe that this is what they wanted to happen.
Absolutely.
They must want a huge cartel-backed child sex ring happening in the United States. They must want lots of our citizens to be dying from fentanyl overdoses. They must want that.
Well,
they must want the destruction of our
cities.
cities.
Show that. They were literally think about it. At one point, they were saying the borders closed, and they were just saying it was blind. But then Texas, it starts building their own barriers, and the Joe Biden administration, the Democrats are actively suing to open it back up
every time.
So they can't even hide from this anymore and pretend that it's not. That
but then they say,
policy.
Congress has to do something.
Yeah.
But we're going to sue, so we have the right to do it. And I would veto any bill that came across
They're literally
my desk.
fighting to open the border and allow our country to be invaded. There's no way around it.
The bad guys here are the CBP agents themselves.
Yeah.
They're the Nazi guards.
And
they're the Nazi guards.
I will say this right now. I will lighten up a little bit. To the CBP agents that may hear this, I assume if you're just now finding out, let's say you work in the facility over off 340, and you're filing paperwork and you do accounting stuff and you have no idea what's going on. Okay, I think it's fair that upon discovery of what the Biden administration is doing, you resigning is the noble thing to do. For those that know exactly what's going on and what's being done and either are complicit, involved in it, or knowing it's happening, don't care and say, leave me out of it, I'll take my paycheck. I will say, there is nothing I pray for more right now than to see these people rot in prison for the rest of their lives. You can come to me and you can offer me an infinity pool, a Ferrari, and a great mansion. I'll say, I want none of those things. You come to me and say, we'll give you one thing. I say, I want those people arrested. I want them in jail. I want each and every one of these CBP agents that's down there on the border arrested by the Texas National Guard and Texas State Troopers and locked up. And I want them to cry and say, but why? And it's because you're a human smuggler, you scumbags. These people are abject evil. They are quite literally I should say figuratively, the demons in the devil's army. I mean that figuratively, perhaps some people believe it literally. This smuggling operation that we are seeing that has Eric Adams in panic, Democrats freaking out, people in Chicago in uproar, their schools are being taken over. And it is these agents on the border with smiles on their faces saying, I don't know, I'm getting paid.
Just doing my job.
I'm getting paid. It's great. I get my paycheck. Hey, man, I don't care about what's happening to this country. I don't care what happens to you. I don't care how many people die. I don't care how many people die trying to cross through these deserts. They are getting paid, and that's all they care about. I hope, if anything, and I don't believe this will happen, but I really hope that when Donald Trump gets elected, one of the first things he does is sends federal agents to arrest all of the agents that were involved in the human smuggling operations. Is the first thing he does. When he begins his mass wave of deportations, he says, the first thing we have to do is stop the human smuggling operation and those who facilitated it. We know for a fact who it was because their names are all in our books. And so I'm going to make sure I do everything in my power, that I lobby every politician I know, that I speak with anyone I know who's working in government and say, I expect these men to be in prison. Now, to be fair, I expect criminal charges to be brought against them, the evidence to be presented in a court of law, and for the sentence to be warranted for the crime committed. And I don't know, how many years do you think you get for human smuggling?
I'm going to look it up.
Not enough.
Yeah, probably
10,
not
20?
enough. Maybe just a couple 100 hours community service.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that?
The weed psychosis lady. No, but look, there's going to be some guy who's 23 and he's like, I don't know. My boss just told me to be a human smuggler. And I'm like, okay. I'm looking forward to the day you cry as you're being ripped from your home and thrown into the back
Do you
of a
think that
police
some of
car.
these people should be charged with treason for aiding and abetting the
It's
invasion
not
of our
treason,
country?
it's sedition.
Oh, okay. Or sedition. Do you think some of these people should be charged with some of that? I know there's a little bit different than
not the
child
agents.
trafficking. Correct.
So the higher ranking agents who are aware of what's going on, yes, they're involved in a seditious conspiracy. I think the agents on the border who are just told, hey, be a human smuggler, like they know they're trafficking humans.
Yeah,
Like,
there's no way they don't know at this
they
point.
know. So
Yeah,
that
it's
would be a
just
human
apparent.
smuggling
Can't plead
charge.
ignorance at this
Smuggling
point.
non-citizens into the U.S., it looks like it's punishable by up to 20 years in prison.
Great. That's a good amount of time.
It can be extended to life if someone dies as a result.
Well, there's been a
yeah.
lot that's died.
And there are already
There have
stories
a lot.
that we've pulled up where people have been criminally charged by the DOJ for transporting within the country criminal aliens. So there were two soldiers, two enlisted guys who didn't smuggle these guys across the border. They were just transporting them knowing they were getting paid to do it. And they went to prison. That was several years ago. I think that was during the Trump years. Now the Biden administration ordered these guys to be criminal. I'm sorry, dude. If your boss comes to you and says rob a bank and you go, I guess I have to do it, I look forward to seeing you in prison. Now, real quick, the higher ups in the Biden administration, seditious conspiracy 100%. Lock them up.
I just think this is the point where people who work as border agents for the federal government should consider leaving for, to be a border agent joining the Texas National Guard. They should move to the state level because it seems, at least in this case, like the states are willing to do something the federal government isn't, which is to defend the rights of the people in their communities. I get that the idea of being like, you can't just ask them to leave their jobs is scary. I understand that, but they are in a specialized career where, as far as I know, it's chronically understaffed at the state and federal level. So they could leave. They could change.
They could at least be whistleblowers.
Yeah.
No. You come to me and you say, Tim, I can't quit my job because my kids need food. And I say, okay, what's your job? I work at the cracker factory and I want to support Trump. My company's super woke and I'm scared if I speak up, I'll get fired. How am I going to feed my family? I say, well, that's a tough position. I understand.
Yeah.
I do. Do your best, make money, protect your family. You come to me and say, I can't quit my job. My kid needs food. I go, what's your job? I'm a human smuggler. I say, I look forward to seeing you locked up. I look forward to the day your children are crying as they are ripped from your arms as you are thrown in the back of a police van for being a human smuggler. You do not get to live in the comfort of your own home as a human smuggler. These are some of the darkest and most evil actions a person could engage in. And these guys are like, well, my boss told me to do it. I don't care.
But you could
I
also
have
have
zero sympathy. Lock them up.
You could also have a boss on a state level that's like, no, more razor wire. Don't do that. Like, you're choosing to work for the federal government where this is the order you're getting. There are states that wouldn't make you do this.
Sure, quit. If you're in CBP, quit right now. If you work for the Customs and Border Protection and you are getting a paycheck, knowing what they are doing, and you say, yeah, but my kid needs food, I want you in prison. I don't care. I have no sympathy whatsoever. I don't care what job you're doing. You are facilitating this. When we have the majority of people in this country citing immigration as the principal issue, when you have Democrats and Republicans in uproar, when Biden laughs and says the border's not secure, knowing what he's doing, and you're like, I'm part of an organization that operates human smuggling operation, and I'm like, stop, don't do that. And you go, but my kids need food. Okay, well, bank robbers' kids need food. And when they say, I robbed a bank because I want to feed my family, we still put them in prison.
I think that's that's a reasonable point. It does remind me a lot of the Nazi guards who were just doing their jobs.
Yep.
We still dragged a bunch of them back from Argentina or wherever and put them on trial at The Hague. Didn't we do that?
But at some point, you got to
feel
look
like we did
yourself in
that.
the mirror and ask if what you're doing is moral or not. I mean, that's what it is. This is everything we're really dealing with in our country, in my opinion, is spiritual warfare. We've got a lot of good versus evil going on in our country. And people, to Tim's point, they make excuses and say, well, I'm just doing this or I've got to do it for this reason. But what you're doing is one of the most cruel, unjust things you could ever do, which is aiding and abetting and actually participating in smuggling, not just humans, but I mean, children. This is absolutely despicable. And I love your outrage and I share it with you.
We had Michael Mouse came on the show a long time ago and he said that, I'm paraphrasing, but the actions of politicians are letters to Santa without the police.
Yeah.
It is the actions of, and so I've had a lot of people try to make this play. Politicians come in here. I'm like, no, you can't blame the cops. They're good people. It's the leadership that's bad. I say, I don't care about leadership. Bill de Blasio can go out in the middle of the street, buck naked, scream into the wind for all I care. It's meaningless. But if he does it and the cops then protect him while he's doing it, now that's the problem. The individual officers who are engaging in this activity. This goes back to when de Blasio stole taxpayer funds to paint Black Lives Matter in front of Trump's Fifth Avenue building and then used, I think it was like 27 police officers to protect it. So stealing from the public coffers for a political purpose, for personal gain.
Yep.
And those cops had smiles on their faces while they did what they were told. That's policing in New York City. Now, I mean, what we're seeing at Eagle Pass, and not just Eagle Pass, but in Arizona and New Mexico, is shocking. What is it, an 80-year-old guy? How old's that old man?
I think he's 82, but I'll double check.
Cartel activity on his property.
Yeah.
He defends himself.
Yep.
They arrest him. They lock him up. That's why I'm like, no, there's no sympathy at this point. It's not just about one thing happening one time. It's about the state of the country and where we are right now, where you defend your property, you go to prison.
74. Sorry.
He was 74 years old.
Just like the
I
McCluskeys.
just aged him so dramatically.
Remember the McCluskeys? They had
Yeah.
to get a pardon just
Yeah.
for standing outside of their home being like, don't you guys come in.
People broke in, ripped the fence down.
Yeah.
And they brandished firearms and they got in trouble for it.
And that's the thing, though. Like, if I really believe if the American people thought that they were able to go to the border and help Texas National Guard defend the border right now and secure a border, you would see American patriots who would willingly go do this. But they can't because they're going to get thrown in prison if they were to even think about doing that. If they went down there at all, I mean, they're threatening to arrest people for holding a video camera and videotaping it. Could you imagine
They
what would
have
happen?
been doing that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Could you imagine if someone was down there saying, "We're not going to let you in"? What they would do to these people?
Meanwhile, isn't it crazy that Texas had to make a law that illegally entering Texas
Yeah.
is
from
illegal.
from an international border was illegal?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just insane. They started
More
arresting
so,
people the other day.
The federal government tried stopping them.
Yes.
Well, and there's really technically when you get into the roles of the federal government, they're really limited in what they're supposed to do. They've gotten way too big for their britches and everything. But
Well, look at
one
all
of the
these
few
federal
things they're supposed
agencies.
but one of the things they're supposed to do is actually secure the border.
You have
one of
so
the-
many few true
Yeah.
jobs, and
And
you
it-
won't do it.
exactly.
And they're
That's the
supposed
point.
to protect states from invasion. What is it like?
Yes.
Yeah, they're supposed to definitely do that. It's interesting looking at the Supreme Court and giving them the benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's say we could give them the benefit of the doubt. If you look at some of their other cases recently, or if you look at the oral arguments in Chevron the other day, the EPA versus West Virginia, even Dobbs, if you look at these things, what they're doing is they are handing power back to the legislators.
Yep.
They're taking it away from the courts. They're saying, and if you look at this situation, they're saying this lower court does not have the right to decide what the federal government can do in this border situation. So you wonder, like, perhaps the Texas state legislature should start taking this stuff up, and
Perhaps Congress should look into
Perhaps-
impeaching some of these Supreme Court justices
won't do
who
it.
are doing it. I know. I would. I'm telling you right now, day one, I'd be filing articles of impeachment.
impeaching Mayorkas. It doesn't
Amen.
make any sense that they're not. And it
Absolutely.
doesn't make sense that they're not. Yeah, that's interesting.
Let me pull
right?
up this story from the Post Millennial. U.S. voters say
I wanna object to
immigration,
that.
not inflation, is a top priority, Harvard-Harris poll. So Post Millennial reports more voters are pointing to immigration as their top issue instead of inflation as the country goes in the 2024 election. A Harvard Harris poll of 2,346 registered voters that was released on Monday. The survey found 35% of respondents had immigration as their top concern, and 32% named the topic of inflation. Immigration has jumped 7 points from last month. I spent the holidays in Chicago. They're trying to build camps.
Sad.
What do you want to call them? Internment camps? I don't want to say
think that we should call them detention camps for illegal migrants. illegal
concentration
immigrants.
camps.
You could call them concentration camps. In New York, Eric Adams is putting a curfew on them,
Yeah.
On the illegals?
on the shelters that house the illegal immigrants.
So when people say inflation, the only issue there is that these people aren't aware of immigration.
Correct.
Because if you go to someone who's Gen Z and they're like, the rent is too damn high. I say, okay, what's your apartment? They say it's 70 square feet. And I spent $2,000. I respond, did you know that New York is taking illegal immigrants and giving them hotel rooms with full bathrooms, kitchenettes, and a bed?
The entire
a TV,
Roosevelt Hotel.
Utilities, everything's taken care of, while you struggle to pay your bills?
Yep.
Immigration is an inflationary issue.
Absolutely.
100%.
And we should impeach Mayorkas. It's absolutely mind blowing that we don't. Our Congress, who's controlled by the House or the Republicans control the House, and they don't even have enough backbone to impeach Mayorkas right now. This
It is
is
shocking.
mind blowing. They
And
should all be primary.
we should be impeaching. We should be impeaching Joe Biden.
Absolutely. 100%.
You know what the name of the game is? You know why like a state like West Virginia would not try to investigate CBP? How much in federal dollars does West Virginia receive?
Exactly what it is. It's so unfortunate. Some of these smaller red states balance their budget on the backs of the federal dollars coming in. That's really one of the things they hold hostage over the small states when it comes to like the transgender issue in schools and the education stuff. They're
That's
giving
the
this
Department of
federal,
Agriculture, too.
Department, yeah, but the Department of Education. That's why I'm a proponent of getting rid of the federal Department of Education. Well, quite frankly, I would abolish all the 3-letter agencies and return the power back to the states and the local communities where they belong.
The Department of Agriculture was interesting because they were saying if you don't have these lessons about whatever gender theory ideology, will cut the money for subsidized lunch, which is then the
bathrooms.
Which
they
and
had
then
the bathrooms and the sports
and then they
teams.
were like, which obviously means that the headlines would be like Republicans vote against funding lunches for kids in need. Like they know what they're doing and they're being dishonest about it. And still conservative small rural states pay the price.
I will say I do think conservative media got a good handle on that story right from the beginning and said, Biden administration is threatening free school lunches for kids over letting boys into girls' bathrooms. I thought we did a good job with that. The other thing, too, the Department of Agriculture is a disaster. They had this whole thing where they were prioritizing farm loans for minority farmers. And you had a group of white farmers sued and they were like, this is discriminatory. And you had a judge actually say, you can't fix past discrimination with current discrimination. And Tom Vilsack was, handed his loan papers back or whatever, but he should be impeached also. He's a disaster as well. Just nobody really pays that much attention to the Department of Agriculture.
Because there's so many. I mean, you were making this point too. It has gotten so big that people don't realize that it's the Department of Agriculture that oversees school lunches, or that,
Right.
you know what I mean? They don't always know what the scope of every agency is. And part of that is because we've had so many different agencies that have been reshuffled and reorganized that we can't keep track of it. And I'm sure they can't either, which is
these agencies.
horrible.
Abolish them, not just defund them. Abolish these 3-letter agencies. Return the power back to the states, back to the local communities, back to you and me and we the people. Because when it's at a localized level, there's accountability. There's no accountability. We have a bunch of unelected bureaucrats right now sitting in D.C. running our country behind the scenes with no accountability.
And how many staff people just sitting there like ordering lunch every day?
Just hanging
Think
out.
about office life. Think how expensive office life is.
There are bureaucrats like
Toner
crossing off the
cartridges.
calendar being like, I'm so much closer to my government pension, which, people need jobs, people need to work. I'm not criticizing them
People
for that.
taking
It's
their
just
vacations.
like, ultimately, why is this job available at all?
Well, not only that,
Yes.
my answer to most of these people is name one thing that the federal government does better than the private sector.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, right?
I can't name anything that the government does better than what the private sector would do.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Hold on.
Do you have
Waste money.
something?
Yeah, waste money.
There you
We're
go.
good at
There you
that.
go.
You did
Absolutely.
need someone to be.
I got to be honest.
That's
Like the
true.
private sector is really good at wasting money, but the government, man.
At least there's accountability
They've
there
really
to
nailed it, though,
shareholders
in
and
the
such.
government.
Yeah.
Well, because it's not their money and they haven't earned it.
Well, think about
So
this.
you don't feel anything for losing money if you didn't earn that money. It's just nothing.
And
It
you can
feels
just
like
ask for
nothing.
more, right? At
Right.
least with the private sector,
Yes.
you'd have to eventually say to your shareholders, like, so this is why we keep losing money.
Right.
And with the government, they can say, we lost money, but no worries. You'll just give us more and we'll raise taxes if we need to.
Imagine being so bad at managing money that you steal every citizen in the country's money and you're still $34 trillion in debt.
That is just
Like,
insane.
you almost have to attempt to do that. They
and
literally
it's still
steal everyone's
rising.
money.
I mean, we didn't stop at 34.
and we're 30-something trillion dollars in debt.
We're more than 34 now because it just keeps going up.
They're
and
like,
there's
we're
no
going to set a
accountability,
record.
though.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Guys, listen though. This is the thing. The spending originates in the House. Republicans have control of the House. We have to, as I'm a Republican, as Republicans, we have to own this at this point.
So
that
why
they're
did they
not
pass
doing
another,
anything. Weak.
CR?
We have a bunch of weak, spineless jellyback rhinos representing us in
Spineless
Congress right
jellyback
now
rhinos.
because they want to just kick the can down the road and sign another CR and allow all these things that's currently happening to continue happening instead of holding the line.
So
That's what it comes down to.
when you decided to run for Congress, you ultimately decided that you have to go to the federal level to cut off problems that are affecting West Virginia rather than run for
Unfortunately.
state, because you did hold state
Yeah,
office.
and unfortunately, the federal government has gotten so big that it does affect everyone, and I don't want that. I want to get rid of all that power. It's centralized at the federal level and return it back to the states where there's accountability. Once again, there are limited roles the federal government's supposed to have. One of them is securing our border, and they can't even do the one thing like.
Well,
instead
it's
of-
not that they
They
can't.
won't.
They
exactly.
won't.
But instead of worrying
Can't
about all
stop,
these
won't
other
stop.
issues that's not part of their role, they should worry about the few things that they're supposed to do, which is that. And I think that our national the spending right now and our everything, our debt is really a matter of national security at this point. I mean, honestly, think about the interest rate alone is going to be like $1 trillion a year on interest alone coming up. This is crazy.
Yeah.
I'll just print more money until the economy implodes.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly, I think that we're at the point. Maybe that's what they're trying to do.
That
They
is
realize
what
that there's
they're-
no going
yeah.
back at this point, so
They're
they're
in
just
favor of that.
print it and go.
It's like an accelerationist
And then
mindset.
think about all the money we're sending to Ukraine and our own country's being invaded, and we're sending money to other countries to secure their border.
Well, and we're sending money all over the world for really stupid
Yes.
things as well, like, gender research in
Yes.
India and all of these different kinds of things that don't make any kind of sense at all. We send money to the UN, and then the UN goes out there and tells all of these nations, again, I hate to harp on it, even though I do all the time. The UN goes out there, and the World Health Organization, and they go out there and they tell everybody that they have to have more gender equity and trans.
It's so
and
sad that we
whatnot.
send a single dollar to any of those organizations.
Right.
It's
It
absolutely
really is-
ridiculous. Think about it.
really
They steal our
absurd.
money. We're in debt, $34 trillion in debt. They steal our money, and they're sending it over to these organizations who, quite frankly, hate us.
They do. Yeah, they do hate us.
And we're
and
funding
so
it.
do most of the illegal immigrants coming in hate us.
Yep.
What is it that they think they're going to get here?
They're
other
waving the
than
flag
take
of
over?
another country as they're coming across
Yeah.
our border.
Well, and they're
That's
not
crazy,
asked. I
too.
mean, like, if you know anyone who's taken a citizenship, like, you are ultimately supposed to pledge loyalty to America. You're
Correct.
supposed to adopt the values. You're supposed to become patriotic on some level, right? And that's not the bar when you migrate illegally, right? When you come across the
Assimilation
border,
should be the goal.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
we don't have assimilation going on at all. In fact, we have, a woke Democrat powerful officials who are saying that people shouldn't assimilate because America is bad and their own national heritage and whatever is better than America. In which case, like, go home.
We have people in
go
Congress
home.
who feel that
It's
way.
okay.
We have elected Democrats in
Right.
Congress who
It doesn't
literally
make any
openly say they
sense.
hate our country.
Like what all of the AOC people, right? Her whole little crew.
Yeah.
but that
They hate
means that their
America.
voters hear that their voters hear that message and resonate with it, right?
Well, they vote. They vote for
They
them.
want them. They want that to be
Ilhan
how.
Omar hates
why
America.
would you pick a? To me, I can't wrap my mind around it. Why you would pick an elected official that is like, I hate it here.
Yeah.
I don't believe in anything. I don't like these values. I actively think everything is bad, and therefore I will not work for its betterment and its security. Like, you are picking instability. How can you be okay with that? How can you inflict that on your neighbors?
It must be what they want.
Well, I think that our school system has really, unfortunately, indoctrinated a lot of the young people into believing a lot of this. They really do not like America. A lot of the young college age kids right now,
We taught them to hate us.
and well, it's because our public universities, in particular, have been basically transformed into creating social justice warriors, and that's what they're doing. And that's why I think that we need to withhold funding from these universities if they want to push these social justice warriors and push people to hate our
for
countries.
sure.
Withhold that
I
money.
agree
You
on
can
that.
become a public or a private university and fund it yourself if you want to do those sorts of
But
Or
things.
just
even
shut
the-
them down.
Or
yeah.
shut them down and completely. I agree, but I'm just saying.
And I don't want to pay back the student loans either.
Yeah.
I think that the universities should pay back the student loans with their own endowments.
But
And I
that,
think
that's
we
a
should-
scary.
Biden's unilaterally just doing it.
and
He's
we
just
should
doing it even though the Supreme Court said no.
Yep.
and we should
So,
stop issuing them.
What does that
right?
mean for Texas?
Like, this is what I never get about student loans, which is that it's a bad system. We talk about constantly. It's handcuffing yourself to debt as you launch into adulthood. It's not a good return on investment for anyone's. If you were a small business as an 18-year-old saying, please give me money for this,
Can't get it.
you wouldn't get it. And yet we're still like, well, it's okay. Biden's going to forgive them, and then we'll just keep
Yep.
issuing them. So we pretend like we want to eradicate this problem, we being the federal government right now, by forgiving the debt, but also we're actually perpetuating the problem because we still give out student loans that we know are bad. It just makes no sense, and people are expected to say, like, I'm not going to use any sort of critical analysis to say this is a broken system that's meant to entrap me.
Well, before I got into real estate, like I was a school teacher. That's kind of what I went to school for.
What year did you teach?
What year? What grade you mean? Or,
Yeah.
I taught fourth grade and then I taught some sixth grade.
Okay.
But the thing is that's crazy about what's going on in our school system right now. It would be less scary for me if I thought these teachers were pushing this social justice stuff from a malicious standpoint. The scariest part about all of this is they've been indoctrinated into believing it's their role and their moral duty to overstep the parents and step in and push these issues. That's the scary part about this whole
Well,
thing.
and they learned all that in the grad schools that are
Correct.
funded by the federal government
Correct.
that we should shut down.
Absolutely. That's the scary part,
Yeah.
honestly.
But
Yeah.
so do you think that people are able to reconcile their own sense of self with the lack of morality in America? I feel like ultimately one of the things that drives an abandonment of traditional American values is the internal selfishness that people are really cultivating these days.
Yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from on that. And I just think that we are underestimating how young minds, 21 and under specifically, 25 and under, how they can be manipulated in some way. I mean, when you're into an environment where someone's placed in an authoritative level, like a professor, and they're telling you that this is, this is what you're supposed to do as a teacher or whatever else, and you start to believe that, and then you turn on TV and billboards and everywhere, it's all around you, all the celebrities that you, once again, are up on this platform, and I think that they've just been manipulated. I really do. And I think that people are waking up to it, though. I mean, I tell everyone that on the ballot in 2024, we have Joe Biden with tyranny and, poverty, or you can have freedom and prosperity with President Trump.
Yeah. But I also wonder if it's enough of an antidote, like being awake to it and actually changing the way you live and the way you approach your life. Is it enough to turn the tides?
I don't know. I really don't know that answer, because I don't know if there's enough people who would be willing to do that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of conservative teachers out there who are afraid to speak, and not just teachers, and a lot of these, but they're afraid to speak out, though. And I tell everyone, look, what happened to myself and everyone else involved in January 6th specifically, they were using us as examples to put fear into the American people. And I think we have to remember that our rights do not come from the government. Our rights come from God, our creator, and the Constitution was written to prevent the government from infringing on our natural God-given rights. And so if we willingly give up our free speech out of fear, we've already lost this battle.
Correct.
And we're in a battle right now for the future of this country.
Let me jump to the story from SCNR.com. Pro-Biden super PAC to spend $1 million on TikTok influencers. The PAC may have already violated some of TikTok's policies. We got enough problems as it is with TikTok and their algorithm and all that. And now, quote, the effort is part of a larger Democratic strategy to lure young voters into battleground states who polls show are increasingly critical of Biden, whether over his age or issues like his stance towards Israel. Biden's re-election campaign itself is amping up its work with social media influencers in 2024, though those partnerships are currently unpaid. Daniel Wessel, a Biden campaign spokesperson, told Politico. The White House team separately is also flexing its creator game, throwing its first ever influencer Christmas party last December. So there's this guy who made a video where his TikTok, he's got like 400,000 followers, and he just yells. So he's always complaining about something and he yells, and he's complaining about the economy. He recently made a video where he said he was contacted by someone claiming to be in the Democratic Party who offered him $50,000 for a pro-Biden post.
Wow.
And
One post.
Wow. And he said, as somebody who sells shout outs and reads, like $50,000 is a lot of money for a single post. Right? So the powers that be are ready to drop, I would assume, more than $1 million.
Yeah.
On getting people to claim Biden's the right choice. I remember back in 2016, there were a lot of high-profile personalities on YouTube that for some reason were just in favor of Joe Biden, and we were like, why? But here we go. I'm wondering what the Republicans have to counter this.
I was wondering that too. That was my first question what is the RNC spending on social media influencers? And if you look back at Biden's history in office and his campaign, he's been spending money on influencers this whole time. I remember distinctly Jen Psaki had a whole round table of influencers come into the White House to tell them all to promote the Ukraine war. I forget who, there was reporting on that from the Washington Post. I think it was actually Taylor Lorenz covered that. We also had, remember the guy in the white suit with no shirt,
yeah,
which I don't understand, a suit with no shirt. Like, that dry cleaning bill has got to really be insane. But he was out there with his fingernails and his cell phone, boosting the White House. You had remember that guy?
Yeah.
He was the worst guy. He was
doing like a day in the life of the intern at the White House.
He was awful. And then over the summer, you had was it not this past summer, but the previous summer, you had Biden brought in a whole bunch of social media influencers to tell him why it's important to have child sex changes and all kinds of stuff like that. You had Dylan Mulvaney in the White House doing that.
Is that the one where the dude was took his shirt off and was like on the White House lawn? Is that the one?
No, that was June Pride this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it
wasn't a dude.
No, it was.
It was a dude.
I thought you were talking about
there was males and females.
There were males and females. The females had no breasts and the men had large
breasts.
ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
So here's a question for you. If a pro-Trump super PAC came to us and said, we want to give you $100,000 to promote us and do a read, should we accept that?
I don't think we should, because number one, we're all actually different entities, and so it would be confusing to see our individuals' opinions away from the brand. And I also think that ultimately, at least for me,
that has nothing to do with, like, should the show accept a sponsorship that's a political sponsorship supporting a candidate, if they were to pay us a lot of money? Should
there
I
was
do it like,
full-
hey, this episode's brought to you by TrumpIsTheBest.com?
You'd lose credibility.
Yeah, I think it makes you look biased. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think
Even if
that-
there's full disclosure.
I mean, it's Tim's show ultimately, so if that's what you wanted to do, that's fair. But if we were operating like the editorial board of a newsroom, then I wouldn't want to do it. I also don't like when editorial
we're not the
boards.
newsroom.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I also don't like when editorial boards endorse candidates. I think that there is a level of
Is SCNR going to endorse?
I don't know.
I don't
mean,
think
that's up
so.
to Chris and
You don't
Cassandra.
think so? I don't think post millennials.
I don't know why we would.
Yeah, it's up to
either.
Chris and Cassandra.
I
personal
don't know why
opinion
we
is-
would. It's
Yeah.
up to Chris and Cassandra because they're the editors.
It's weird that newsrooms endorse candidates. I
think it's
understand
super
that.
weird.
I don't
But
like it either.
so my question then is for you, Libby.
Yeah.
Personally or organizationally, would you accept $50,000 to $100,000 in support of from a PAC to support a candidate?
To support a candidate?
Well, like they
No,
say,
but I would accept
we want
the ad dollars.
we want a post that makes insert candidate looks good.
Like sponsored content?
Well, however, a PAC would pay for an influencer to promote.
Like you make a post saying, "Hey, this is me. This person's awesome."
Advertorial on the Post Millennial or Human Events or something.
I don't think so. I would take ad dollars. If you wanted to buy ads like for your political campaign, I would probably take ad dollars for that. I think that would be fine. I don't know that I would be in favor of doing an advertorial. I'm not crazy about
it's even more shady when they
posts.
It's even more shady when it's the
Like
TikTok
that.
posts. It's
I like them
tricking
for
people to
products.
look like
I mean,
it's
a product
organic,
is a product.
and it's not organic, and they're paid. I think that's a little bit more shady.
Here's the bigger risk. I'll tell you the one reason why I would not accept it, because the rules around political advertising are intense, and that's a nightmare to navigate.
Well, and then you'd have to
Insert-
take anybody's political advertising.
Not necessarily.
Isn't that what the TV stations had to do?
It depends on the structure of how your ads are done. If you don't have the inventory, you can't sell the inventory.
We're so
If-
far past TV.
If I own but a single roll of toilet paper and a Democrat wants to buy it and a Republican wants to buy it, only one of them is getting it. But the bigger issue is
if
not.
I had a single roll of toilet
The issue
paper, I
is-
wouldn't sell it.
The issue is not the issue of is it appropriate. I think you end up running into the problem of Democrats have no issue whatsoever taking money from powerful political organizations to make fake content.
Yep.
And then people on the right are like, well, I think that's wrong. We shouldn't do it. And so I'm just like, yeah, there's an issue of we have limits on this show of what we're willing to accept in terms of sponsorship. We've had people try to buy their way onto the show. We never allow people to come on the show in exchange for money. That is not allowed. And but I recognize the challenge of so long as people on the right who are opposing the establishment reject this, standing on their moral high ground, the Democrats will keep having the advantage because they have no scruples.
It's one of the things that actually works against us as conservatives is, we wonder, how do they always get these people out into these big frenzy, out into these big mobs or whatever? It's because Democrats are a group mentality. It's easier to herd them into one certain thing. Whereas conservatives, we're just like, I just want to be left alone. Just want to live my life, want to raise my family, start a business. And in this aspect, it's kind of used against us.
Yeah, I think that's similar. I think the acceptance for individual difference, it's much higher among conservative communities than it is in on the left, which is sort of the inverse of what they market, right? They say we're tolerant, we're accepting, but we're actually not. We expect you to fall in line and we expect you to be okay with the things that we're okay with. And I think that's sort of the big lie that they have sold a lot of generations and a lot of really misguided people who feel anxiety within themselves. They don't feel comfortable with who they are. And so they think, I'll just run to whoever's accepting. But I have to earn that acceptance by complying completely and totally with their worldview. And that's very different, especially from, every variation of a conservative community I've personally experienced.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's weird. I mean, I think it is the big... Democrats have, I don't want to say Democrats, left-leaning causes, whether it's Democrat or just different organizations, have always done a really good job of getting out ahead of messages and spinning them. Yep. And I think this is something that Republicans struggle with. In this case, like talking about endorsements or whatever else, like I think ultimately I have to live with myself, and I would rather try to find another way to tackle the advantage than to just do what they're doing, because I have to live with myself at the end of the day.
Well, and back to your point of the left, like they'll accept you until you step out of line. And the perfect example of that is the people who were transitioning. They sung their praises and were like, oh, and then when someone wanted to detransition because they're like, wait a second, I made a mistake. They like the left attacked these people. I mean, it's
weird.
So
if they were
sad.
tolerant, wouldn't they just be like, yeah, everyone has a different experience,
Exactly.
people's gender journey or whatever.
One of the most frustrating things for me is Daily Wire posted a video on X. It's Ben Shapiro debating destiny, and Ben defines woke, and Ben is wrong in the majority of his definition.
What did he say?
He defines woke as this ideology rooted in postmodernism. He gives a long definition, but he basically says it's about power structures. It's about, those who in power tend to be bad. And I'm paraphrasing rather poorly, but he basically gives this ideological woke is, postmodernism with a racial component and then gender ideology. It's totally wrong. Wokeness means adherence to the social orthodoxy of dominant institutions. That's it. That explains why. So the issue is, for someone like Ben, I can understand why he would say it this way. He's a political junkie. So he's looking at all the highest level things, and wokeness is identifiable in its root form. The average person who says woke does not mean any of that because they don't understand what that is. And so they'll refer to a woke person because they're flying the Ukraine flag or something in their profile picture. Why is it that there's an overlap between those who support critical race theory, gender ideology, and supporting war in Ukraine? Perhaps the argument can be made that because Russia is the power and Ukraine is weaker, therefore Russia is bad. Well, that doesn't really make sense because the U.S. is funding Ukraine to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. In fact, supporting Ukraine is supporting Western imperialism and hegemony. So why would they support going to war against Russia for Russia's border dispute? We in the West are the dominant power because all that really matters is woke is a reference to when someone adheres to the social orthodoxy of the dominant institutions. And it's amorphous. Sometimes it's woke, sometimes it's woke in the esoteric sense. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's postmodernist, critical race theory, gender ideology. Sometimes it's absolutely not. And everyone falls in line. The best way to understand this is how the left uses a Mott and Bailey tactic. If the left was if woke truly was postmodernism, there would be no Mott and Bailey. They'd quite literally say, here's our argument, have a nice day. But they don't. They change their argument to a civil libertarian argument when threatened, showing there is no actual ideology here. It is simply just, we are a group that is in line with each other. We look for others who are wearing the same color clothing. And so long as we do that, and we are up to date on the latest fashion, we are aligned. That's what woke is. I describe it as a bunch of birds flying in the sky, flying in random directions. They occupy a very specific space. You can see them. Oh, they're over the lake. Yes, they have this weird leftist postmodernist thing to them, but they're really flying around and they can move at a moment's notice. So I tweeted a picture of something called an ant mill. You guys have heard of this?
No.
Ants, when they walk, they leave pheromone trails to signal to other ants where they went, what they're doing. They come back with food and they can follow that line. So you notice this in your kitchen, the line of ants. Mm-hmm. An ant mill is when the ants get turned around and form a circle. Yeah. What happens is they follow pheromones in a circle forever until they until they starve to death.
Right. What? It's called a March of Death as well.
March of Death, a death circle,
really
and ant mill.
Yes. So they'll just walk in a circle until they.
Wow. Because they can't see the big picture.
Yeah.
They're a tiny ant, and to them, they're just following the path. And the path is one big circle, and they're all following each other, and more keep funneling in until they eventually just starve to death or dehydration and die. That's wokeness. You join the circle, they're all following each other. You say, what is the ideology they hold? Whatever the ideology of the person in front of them holds. Yeah. It could be anything.
Well, it's a shifting sand.
That's why Wimixin is offensive today, but not offensive tomorrow. It's why women with a Y is offensive today, not tomorrow. Because postmodernism is just a current component of the cult ant mill ideology. And it can become imperialist Western hegemony at a moment's notice. Yeah. So one day they're saying power structures are bad. The next day they're like, we support NATO expansionist on the Russian border.
It's whiplash. It's whiplash. Yeah, between that and the conspiracy theories. And it's because I think very strongly that the leftist ideology is a shifting sand. Wherever you put your foot down now, it's not the same as it's going to be soon. And they always act like there has been no change, but it's actually not aligned on any moral foundation. And I think that's a big difference. Like conservatism as an idea is on a moral foundation.
Yep. There you go. That's what it looks like. Army ants trapped in a death circle, all just spinning around confused. Sometimes they can break out of it. Usually they don't. Someone actually posted the video. You can see it right here. Let's see if we can pull this one up. They just walk in a circle. This is how I view wokeness. I've often described it as this whirlpool that spins faster and faster. Some people get ejected from it because it's been so fast. They wake up and they realize how bad things are. But for people who are saying things like woke is postmodernist ideology, and that's what we mean by woke, and yeah, you might. But the average person sees this going on. And so if one day someone is claiming, like Hassan Piker is a really great example of this, because he made a video where I had defended something he had said about Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast was providing cataract surgeries, and Hassan said, it's ridiculous that we're cheering this on when we could be doing this. Instead, we're wasting all this, we waste money, we don't have healthcare. I said, Hassan is correct. It is silly that Mr. Beast is effectively a game show curing people's cataract blindness. And I was like, meanwhile, we're sending $100 billion to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Hassan responded by insulting me and mocking me for criticizing the money being sent to Ukraine. This is the perfect example. A man who's like, why aren't we giving people cataract surgery? Also send $100 billion to Ukraine. There is no moral pathway or ideology.
Right.
He's just saying whatever is socially acceptable within the dominant institutions, running in a circle until they eventually, and here's the harsh part. They abort their kids.
Yep.
They more likely are to sterilize their kids. Yep. They advocate for things that result in self-harm and death. Yep. And so I view wokeness quite literally as a death spiral where over a long enough period of time, these people and their ideas will cease to exist.
It's crazy. I mean, it collapses in on itself, really. Some of it to me with this, how does this occur? This death march. Some of it I think is
simple and ant turns and
no. What I mean is like among woke people is I think some of it is the language that used. They're like when you respond to Hassan, yes. So don't send money to Ukraine. He knows he's supposed to be in support of Ukraine. And so that's something he can't argue with, right? So he has to be like, well, you're wrong. It's these sort of terms that they're like when you heard, the Israel-Palestine conflict, whichever side gets described as a colonizer, that's where a lot of young progressives will line up behind because they know the colonizer is always wrong no matter what. And it becomes this very routine way of handling things. And again, it eliminates all critical thinking.
Yeah, but except when it's the West doing the colonizing.
They're against that too.
It's because they're told what to think instead of being taught how to think for themselves.
This is what's really funny about it. The U.S. supports Israel. Israel is engaged in a conflict with Hamas in Gaza, and the left is on the side of Palestine and Gaza. Mm-hmm. The West then also funds Ukraine and NATO expansionist policies onto the Russian border. So these people, not all of them, but many of them, like Hassan, goes off on Israel. Mm-hmm. But defends Ukraine?
Yeah. It's weird,
Which U.S. imperial hegemonistic policy are you opposed to today, Hassan? Yeah. It goes back and forth, I guess.
Whatever the Mockingbird media told them to say.
That's wokeness. No, I think it's whatever his commenters told him to say.
Yeah.
And so all the people start spamming him, and it's just bots. It's like sock puppets. What you'll get is one guy running 50 accounts. He'll respond to someone and say, this thing good, this thing bad, this thing good. And then these people who are susceptible to it read their comments. Oh, you know what? I got to tell you, I talked about the vaping thing the other day, how it really frustrates me.
What frustrates you about vaping?
We can't have vaping in here for legal reasons.
Okay.
Legally, most laws look at vaping and smoking as the exact same. So there's no distinction. And so we have signs saying no vaping. People come in here and they'll do it anyway.
Oh, that's rude.
It's crazy. The craziest thing is when I'm driving in a car with someone and they just blast vape in the car, and I was like, I'm gonna kick you out. So anyway, I was pointing it out, and now I lost my train of thought. What were we just talking about before you asked me?
You were talking about how you were talking about vaping the other day.
No, before that.
We're talking about. Oh gosh, what were we?
We all missed it. I'm sorry.
Because I mentioned that you asked me about it, and then I had to describe it.
We need a court reporter to read back the notes.
No, I forgot.
Right?
Lost my train of thought. It's over. Conversation's done.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
But I'm sure it was a good point. I was interested in it. No, I think all of this comes back to
I was just trying to understand the point fully, and I screwed everything up.
Okay. Tim was talking about people responding to Hassan saying this thing good, this thing bad.
Right.
And then, nope. I don't know if we're going to get there. I can't remember.
Well, you were talking about vaping the other day.
We were talking about vaping the other day. Did you, as a middle school teacher, have to deal with kids vaping?
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's unbelievable. Honestly, anyone who's into teaching for the correct reasons, it is a very difficult job. I mean, it really is. It's really sad. And it's one of the reasons I left, got out. I've been in real estate for 7 or 8 years now, and which is amazing. And
what made you want to do it in the first place, though?
So I mean, I wanted to coach football and be involved, and wanted to have the same schedule as my kids, and wanted to kind of give back to my community. I mean, that was really the thinking behind it at the time. And you get in there, and then you realize it's just a bunch of paperwork. It's just a bunch of. I saw the woke stuff, the liberal ideology coming down, and I'm not a very quiet person. I already knew this was not going to end very well for me, and so I wanted to get out of that. And then obviously the pay sucks, and so nobody goes into it for the pay. But really, I think the biggest issue is, once again, is that they've weaponized the young educators coming out of college and through indoctrination. Like it's a scary thing. They really believe it's their job to overstep their parents.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's go.
The frustrating thing is when people come on this show and they just read the comments the whole time, and then they start saying and thinking insane things. And we have to warn people, do not read the comments. Like, the chat's fine. I'm not worried about chat or super chats. I'm saying we put up clips. Don't read the comments. Don't waste your time. Okay? You are not ready for this. Some people are ready for this. You are not ready for this. And then what happens is I watch people's brains shatter. Not everyone is capable of handling the internet. And so I think, I'm probably going to start on Twitter. Just only verified accounts can respond to me at this point. It's a waste of time because of the sock puppets. And I think a lot of the DeSantis supporters are sock puppet accounts because they all have like a cartoon character with a fake name, no history until the DeSantis thing. And then they all say the same things right on cue. And I'm like, this is one guy who's just switching accounts or something stupid. It's not legitimate. Yeah. But switch to, on Twitter, I'll switch to just verified only. And then I know that these people have actually paid for an account at the very least. Harder to sock puppet that. But there are a lot of people who don't realize they'll come on this show and they'll be like, here's what I think. Then I'll hear from one of their reps or, one of their employees or them later on. And they'll be like, everybody was really mad about insert issue. And I'll be like, were they? Were they? Or was it like a handful of people who spammed the comment? And out of the 1,000 comments that we received, you read 30 of them. And then you think that's public sentiment.
Yeah.
So that's what happens to people like Hassan. He'll be talking online. People will start spamming his chat and he'll be like, I agree with whatever they're saying because it makes me money.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm with you though. I only read the verified comments because I get so many people from the left specifically who just hate me because of mainly January 6th and where I stand on a lot of these issues. But I don't even waste my time reading through those because it would take forever to do that, and most of them are probably fake. So I don't pay attention.
It's probably not real. Yep. If you were to go to National Harbor over in DC, big Ferris wheel, a bunch of restaurants. I go there. It's DC, urban, liberal, and people are like, "Oh man, I'm a big fan of the show." If you were to believe what these people are spamming on Twitter, I couldn't go to these places. Everybody hates me.
Yeah.
I go to Pittsburgh. It was crazy. I've never been recognized more in my life. But Pittsburgh is Antifa town. What do you mean? They want you to think that. Mm-hmm. So we had a show several years ago in, was it Pittman, New Jersey? 2 weeks before the show, Antifa threatened to burn the theater down.
I remember this. I was there.
Yeah, and the guy who runs theater was like, I can't, I'm terrified. I cancel your contract, despite saying he could handle Ann Coulter and the protests are meaningless. And then I think like 12 people showed up to protest.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the fear is how they keep certain people compliant, right? I mean, I've known other organizations that have had cancels contract over and over again because there is a possibility maybe that someone bad show up. But, you are from the community that you represented, and when you went through January 6th, how did people react to you, right?
Oh, my community loves me for it, honestly. I mean, no joke, the support is amazing. And I tell everyone, the fear of being canceled in a lot of ways is worse than being canceled. So, like, I can't get a banking account at most major banks.
You can't get a bank?
At major banks, I cannot.
Basically?
Yep. Can't get a credit card at a major bank, can't get a loan, any of those things. I'm considered a domestic terrorist by this administration, can't travel freely in this country. But you know what? Once again, our rights do not come from the government. Our rights come from God. We have natural God-given rights. And so we can't give that up out of fear of what's going to happen to us. And that's what's taking place in our country.
Did you see that Yuval Harari clip? Did you guys see that? Mm-mm. It was a clip of Yuval Harari doing a TED Talk talking about how human rights are just a fiction we came up with. And they don't really exist. And I thought,
He's right.
Yeah, but like...
He's right.
But, I mean, you could say lots of things are made up.
Right.
But I don't agree that natural rights are a fiction. I believe that they were God-given.
Well, I mean, in the sense that humans, at the bare minimum, have come to realize some things are good and some things are bad, and we've agreed upon those things, and we consider it evil to do those things.
But if we don't maintain
to break
that perspective, then we'll be in a completely amoral society, which is kind of where we're heading.
We are. We have CBP agents smuggling humans.
Right. We also have the Biden administration, the incumbent president. his main policy platform right now is killing babies.
Yeah.
Do people
That's
use
so wacky.
Natural rights and human rights interchangeably? Because I feel
Maybe
like
they're not
natural,
the same thing.
I
you
feel like
think?
they're not the same thing
Interesting.
because so
I was
many
listening
things.
to it and I was thinking they were the same thing.
Oh, see, I think of human rights like I think of the Constitution, the rights that we were given by God separately, and I think of like everyone's guaranteed water as a human right. Everyone's guaranteed medical care as human. Like when people use that sort of expansive terminology for human rights, which we hear all the time, that's
right.
sort of what I think that is applying to. But maybe I'm misinterpreting.
If he says human rights are a fiction we've made up, like healthcare being a human right, exactly. Yeah, that's a made up thing. So when I look at God-given rights, I think of like the things that exist in reality, like you can speak,
Yes.
and you can defend yourself,
Yes,
things like that.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking about it on Twitter, and someone was like, imagination must be made up because we can't envision, we can't see that either.
We imagined imagination.
We imagined imagination. That must be a
But
fiction.
it really goes back to once again, our youth have been taught, and I would argue indoctrinated into believing that our rights come from the government. They look to the government when they think it's the government's role to protect them, to feed them, to clothe them, to house them, to keep them safe. That's not the government's role. It's not. That's our role as individuals and leaders of our families, as men, to do those things. And right now, it's people are being trained to look to the government for all of their answers. And that's a scary place to be.
That's definitely what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Trying to make you want to go to the government because everything is such chaos. You go towards the government and they become the organization. They become the saving grace. It's an old Mao thing. It's what Mao would do all the time. He did it constantly. If you look through his reign in China, he would do things where he essentially would create chaos, so discord, and then already have a plan in place for how he's going to suddenly come back and save everybody and be this shining light and just be this amazing figure. It's amazing.
Well, what's the old saying? I'm from the government. I'm here to help is like the worst thing you could ever hear.
Right.
And you think about it, so many times as Americans specifically, we give up freedoms all in the name of safety. So look how the Patriot Act right now is being weaponized against all of us. But at the time, it was the Americans were cheering it on. People were saying, "Yeah, we need the Patriot Act because I don't feel safe."
The Patriot Act
because I did as well. But so many people were like, "We need that because I don't feel safe. The government needs to keep me safe."
It's fear, right?
Out of fear.
Biden ran on safety in 2020.
Exactly.
You mentioned men leading their families. Why do you think there are so many men who don't want to lead their families?
Well, this all started back under the attack on the nuclear family, which is under attack in this country. And if you remember, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, it was the toxic masculinity. And that's what they first started stripping down. They started stripping that down and made it toxic to be masculine and made it toxic to want to be a provider and a protector of your family. And so then when they stripped that down, now they can go into, well, men can be women, because if there's no difference, why can't men be women and women be men? So we all talk about this transgender issue right now. In my opinion, it all started originally with the attack on quote unquote toxic masculinity. But that's what it comes down to.
Do you think that men have masculinity modeled to them in a way that they can then recreate later? Because I almost wonder if that's some of the issue.
Well, I mean, it is part of the issue. Once again, the nuclear family's been under attack for decades in this family. So there's a lot of young men, especially growing up without any sort of male role model in their life, whether that's a father, a grandfather, an uncle, or a coach of some sort. They don't have that. And there's a lot of studies that's been showing too, when you put a male educator in an elementary school, how much it really impacts the young boys in that environment, because you don't see that very often, especially the ones who don't have a male role model at home. And so I think that once again, we got to get back to, there's nothing toxic about wanting to look. We have a generation and a society full of weak men right now. That's what a lot of this culture stuff in our world is as a result of weak men. Because our grandparents' generation, who were strong men, they would never stand by and allow this attack on our women. Do you think my grandparents' generation would stand by and allow men to go change with their daughters in school and participate against them in sports? There's no way that they would allow this to happen. We have a society full of weak men.
I completely agree, and weak men make hard times.
Yep.
But we will talk more about this in the Members Only Uncensored show. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Go to timcast.com, click join us. Members Only Uncensored show is coming up in about a half an hour. But for now, we will read your super chats. So let's see here. YouTube's been giving us the business for the past couple of days. All right. Christopher Lambert says, burp. Unfortunately, Councilman Robert Suppenbach says first. No, burp was first. So you didn't get that one.
Hard defeat there. That's very upsetting.
All right. In the next super chat, we have Token Black Guy who says, hey, Tim, will the Republicans ever grow a pair? They won't. Nope. But the Republicans will be replaced by men who do have some. So there you go. I'm in disguise, says my conspiracy theory. They're getting people used to living in pods and eating disgusting things, bugs, so that when we start flying in space, we're already used to that stuff. Yeah, I like the wild conspiracy theory that all of life is actually a training pod. We are on a colony ship headed to Alpha Centauri. Once your life ends, you wake up as a young child with the full knowledge of a human life. And that's how they train people for the new human colonies.
That would be cool.
That's a cool movie. They should make a movie.
I love that. You know why? Because then you get another chance.
But guess what?
To be alive. Like, I would just want to live forever.
Hold on. So you have this large colony ship flying from Earth to colonize a new planet in Alpha Centauri or wherever. Humans are created in pods and then put into a simulation program to develop into natural humans, understanding the full culture and technology of Earth when they left. Because if they were raised on this sterile spaceship, they would be weird, dejected people. They need social experience. However, you need to sort. Some of these people will be bad, evil, murderous people. Some of them will be good. So, as these people are being trained, and when they come to the end of their lives and they die, the system will then judge them. You, in this training program, did horrible, awful things. Eject. Launches them out into space.
Oh,
you
terrible.
Are a good person who lived a good moral life, and we want you to be a part of the greater society in the new colony. Your pod opens up and you wake up and you're like 7 years old and you're like, this is the weirdest thing ever.
That would be weird.
And it's like, but now you have lived a full adult life and you are a functioning, well-attuned person.
Are there really people who believe this? Like this is like a real thing, or is this you making this up on the?
I'm just making it up.
Oh, this is it's pretty good.
It's like the craziest rose ceremony in The Bachelor of all time.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You get to stay.
Who wants to make the movie?
Home.
You get a car.
I mean, you did a great job making that up on the fly, man. It sounded like it was something you.
Oh, I've talked about something similar before, but you know, we'll make a movie about it. All right, let's grab some more. Wrath of Paul says Sean Strickland had originally won the fight, but then ended up losing to Dricus du Plessis after additional punches were discovered at 3 a.m. the next morning. That's right. Yeah, they actually said, we're going to stop the judge count and we'll come back tomorrow. And then in the middle of the night, people were rushing in boxes of takedowns and strikes that the judges then used. And
I hear Giuliani has video of that.
That's right. Ian Kinney says, Tim, if you think the Samsung AI is wild, you should listen to the Malay speech in English, rendered using HeyGen in his own voice. I've seen it. And it makes his lips move in English. You know, the future is broken. I don't know, man. You know, that idea I had about the spaceship going to colonize a planet was because I was thinking, if it takes 100 years to travel or 200 years, human beings growing up on a spaceship would be maladjusted, broken people who would not be able to colonize. How do you program a human to understand life on Earth, work, and all of these things so that when they arrive on that planet, they're ready for this? You could freeze them, cryogenic storage or whatever, and then they wake up. That's how sci-fi typically does it. I'm like, I like my idea better.
Yeah, I like your idea.
Everyone's in a simulation.
I think that's really fun.
Yeah, you're basically being trained.
You know what that would be a really good video game.
Ooh, interesting.
And then what would the conflict be that the AI, the algorithm breaks and some bad people emerge and the colony splits into two factions?
I think the conflict would be avoiding fascism in the simulation, just like it is right now.
It's space Lord of the Flies.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, right on. All right. Achior says, Trumpaswamy 2024. The polling's looking good for Vivek as VP, but we'll see. He doesn't have the experience. I don't know.
Neither did Trump. Trump had no experience.
That's true. Yeah.
No executive experience. And also, the VP job, I know I say this all the time, but nobody does anything in that job ever since Adams. Nobody has done anything in that job. So if Vivek comes in and has no experience and doesn't know what the job of VP is, he's going to do a way better job than all the VPs
he would raise the bar
history of
and
time.
Actually make it so they have to do something.
I think it's about time the VP actually became a real job.
Well, Harris had experience, and she's in charge of the border right now. We see how that's going.
But she's a tiebreaker in the Senate.
That's her
true.
whole job.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, she's effectively a senator.
the only other argument that I've heard is that this VP might be a big deal depending on, Trump's legal cases and everything else. There's a possibility that this VP has to take over at some point. I don't know how accurate
But that's
it is.
true with Biden and his total deranged brain.
But
that
he's
is
not facing the
functioning.
same legal pressure that Trump
No.
is. But I agree. It'd be cool to have someone who actually makes it interesting. And so that the next time there's a VP, that person is like, well, now I can't just do nothing.
I don't think the people, other than Kamala Harris, who become VP want to do nothing. I think it's just that there's sort of traditionally nothing for them to do.
But if someone breaks that tradition.
But if someone breaks that tradition, someone perhaps
also
with no
think
experience and no executive
Well,
office.
in Trump right now, people I think are looking and saying the VP's got to be the person who takes over after President Trump. And I don't think that necessarily has to be the case. And I'll just be honest with you, I don't care who he picks as VP. I'm voting for President Trump in 2024. I don't care who he picks as
Well,
VP.
the question too is there anybody he could pick for VP that would get people who aren't going to vote for him to vote for him?
That's the question.
I feel like there's not that many people who have just an open mind in this country when
Nope.
it comes to our political leaders at this point. Is there a person who's not voting for Trump who could be swayed, or who's not voting for Biden who could be swayed?
Based on the VP?
No, based on the VP
Yeah.
at this point. I don't think that would really have any impact. It's kind of like a, band that doesn't need an opening act anymore.
Well, the more likely scenario or outcome there would be to try to find someone who could potentially deliver one of these swing states. Maybe someone from one of the swing states who has I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff out there to your point. But that would probably be the more likely situation there, is finding someone who could deliver a swing state and kind of take that off the board there to where they could focus in other areas.
And I think in some ways people are expecting the VP to set the tone of where the MAGA movement will go after. Like maybe even if it isn't who runs in 2028, it's just sort of an indication of who Trump sees as a potential figurehead or a leader of the movement forward. And so in some ways, I think you're right. It's not that it'll sway voters, but I think it does internally have some psychological impact on people who already support Trump.
It should be someone who can be on the campaign trail independently.
Well, and someone who can be trusted, someone who's going to be loyal and not stab President Trump or the MAGA supporters in the back when they get a chance and opportunity to do
That's
so.
the key
Is
thing.
Yeah.
Is there
And
anyone,
that's sort of what we saw with DeSantis. Like DeSantis kept essentially being not very nice to the Trump voters.
Yep.
Yeah. Saying
All
like,
right.
yeah, I don't need your vote and whatever.
Let's read some more. Paul Barnes says, I have a structured settlement and I need cash now. Does anyone know the number?
877. What is
Cars
it?
for Kids?
No.
Is it Cars
Cash
for
Now or
Kids?
something?
Need cash now, yeah.
Yeah.
JG Wentworth. 877
No,
cash now.
I-
877 cash now.
Everybody
Yeah, it
knows
is.
that.
That's right.
It's the most effective commercial
Yeah,
ever.
it is.
I think Cars for Kids is more
If you
effective.
have a structured settlement and you need cash now.
Not
JG
sponsored.
Wentworth.
That's just the
877
best
cash now.
commercial they've ever.
It is.
They nailed it.
Yeah, it's
Everyone's on the bus singing. There's a guy in the Viking costume or whatever. It's a commercial. I'll never, that and
Lives in your
and the weird chinchilla thing screaming about eating sub sandwiches.
That's my new
Some
favorite.
commercials you'll never
that
forget.
was amazing. I think all campaigns should take a leaf out of Quizno's book.
Well, I mean that's that's what we're doing with Cast Brew. We had Alex Stein try to freebase coffee. We just told Alex Stein to figure it out, and he did, and it was fun.
He did freebase the coffee?
No, do not freebase coffee. You cannot. But he had like the spoon and he's lighting. He's like, this isn't working.
It's the world we live in. You have to put a disclaimer out there to not freebase coffee.
Did he just
Yeah.
put the coffee in and nothing else?
He what?
He just
You
put the
should watch
coffee
the
in
He
the
ended. He
spoon?
ended up drinking the
I don't want
coffee.
to spoil it for you.
I do. I should watch the commercial. I haven't seen it.
Mark Jr. says, Tim, what do you think of a Trump RFK ticket? Keep Trump votes and take away votes from Biden. How would you feel about it? I was more in favor of it a while ago. Not so much now because RFK has gone weird. And everyone's kind of like, what the heck happened to this guy? And it might have, maybe it's Epstein related stuff. Because wasn't he on the plane or something like that?
And I always thought it was just that eventually he wants to end up back in the good graces of the DNC. That's why he left being independent anyways.
He wants to what?
Ultimately he wants the DNC support.
Well, I mean, he's pretty far left on a lot of issues, such as the climate change stuff and anti-gun stuff. I mean, that's where he really aligns, is with the left.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Barely a Millennial says, if Texas were to secede, is there any path for other red states like Indiana to join them, or will they have to move to Texas? I'm half joking. I think the border states would align on some kind of regional defense plan for the southern border. So California would not, but Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, maybe even
Oklahoma
probably
might go with them.
Yeah, because it's spilling up. Florida probably would. The other Gulf southern states may, just because of location. But I'm not saying secede, I'm saying pact, like regional defense pact, where they defy the federal government and say, we don't care what you're doing, but we're doing this thing. The question now is, will Joe Biden order the federal government to use force to stop Texas National Guard? If they don't, it's going to be real interesting what other states start doing.
Well, I mean, the left-leaning states, the liberal states have defied federal law before in terms of like the sanctuary cities years ago before we got to this point. So,
but all they do with sanctuary cities is not cooperate with federal law enforcement. So, I think it was D.C. Drano who said the ruling from the Supreme Court could be good. They're saying federal supremacy on immigration. Yeah, that's like California sanctuary state. All that means is if ICE shows up, they just put their hands up and say, we're not helping
you out.
Yeah.
So ICE is
this is totally different because they're basically saying we're going to prevent you from removing these barriers at the Texas border.
Right. Absolutely different. So the feds would have to go in and use force to stop Texas from obstructing them. And if they don't, it's almost as bad as if they do. If they do go in, Texas has a choice to make. Fight the feds or don't. I think they should already be arresting them.
I hope the people in Texas and the leadership in Texas realizes there are a lot of patriots out here in smaller states who don't have the ability, like West Virginia doesn't have the resources that Texas does, on that level to do this, that we are cheering them on right now and watching them, and they are really setting the tone from that standpoint.
If the federal government does not take action after this ruling, it shows the federal government is impotent and unable to enforce its own claims of jurisdiction.
Yeah.
What kind of action could they take?
The feds?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, they have their border guards down there.
And
Texas is reinstalling the razor wire.
No. Their border guards are pushed out of the jurisdiction.
Right. They're not in the Eagle Pass area.
They're asserting it, and Texas says, good luck. The feds would have to forcibly enter, defying Texas's National Guard and the troopers. Texas would then have to make a choice. Use force to repel federal forces coming into the border.
I would love to see some constitutional stuff on this from a sheriff standpoint as well. Could some of these Texas sheriffs have authority to go in and arrest some of these people as well? Like, do they actually have real authority to do that? I mean, I've heard that they do. I don't know, but that's something I would love to see someone who's smarter than me out there watching who could look that up and do some research.
This is wild because I read this story a long time ago. I was reading about gun rights and stuff like 20 years ago. And there were two guys in Texas or something. And I've told the story on the show before, but I'll go through it quick. Guy rear ends the other guy. The guy who gets rear ended is pissed. He's armed. Guy who rear ended him, it was an accident, was armed. The guy gets out of the car, starts screaming and yelling about being rear ended. The guy who did the rear ending gets out of the car, says, calm down, it was an accident. He notices the guy's got a gun. So the guy gets out of his car and sees this guy screaming at him, and he's open carry. So he puts his hand on his hip and puts his hand up. The guy who's screaming sees a guy reaching for his gun, so he draws his gun, puts it low. The guy in the back car sees him draw the gun, so he pulls his out and brings it to high ready. The other guy sees him drawing a gun, aiming at him, shoots him. And so that's how the situation was described, the rapid escalation of, some guy gets out screaming at you and you see he's got a gun, he puts his hand on his hip and holds his hand up, but the other guy sees him reaching for a weapon, and it dramatically escalates to that point. The fear is, it may be that a Texas National Guardsman, let's say, 19 years old, none of these people want to fight the feds. But what happens when it's 3 a.m, some CBP guys, maybe plainclothes even, they're walking down, there's no National Guard that they see, and they're like, we're going to survey and see what's going on. Abbott said he's putting up razor wire. We're going to go look to see how much is put up and then report back to our guys as to what's going on. Young National Guard guy sees silhouettes moving towards him and says, don't move. These guys say, like, who is
we're not even doing anything.
Who are you? Don't tell me what to do. And then it could be as simple as a young guardsman or trooper does not even know feds are approaching, raises a weapon and says, back up now. They say no. They see a guy with a rifle. They draw their weapon. They say back, on the ground. They're both yelling on the ground at each other. Drop the weapon, and then bang.
Yeah.
And then it's possible in a situation like that. If a situation like that happens, it's going to be a shootout. Maybe things calm down after the fact, but it might not even be that Texas marches forward saying we hereby are going to fight feds. It could literally just be a rapid escalation.
Yeah.
It could be a one, like, you ever see that video of the ATF agent getting arrested?
Yeah,
He goes to the house to take a shotgun, and then the cops arrest him. It could literally just be that. An ATF, or a CBP guy is walking up to the border, and he goes to talk to them, and they're like, drop the weapon, back the F up now. And he's like, I am a federal agent. You are not. I'm going to do this to me. And then he dies.
Right.
Well, people are also forgetting that, and when it comes to Texas, I mean, their economy is larger than a lot of countries. I mean, they could secede if they wanted to and actually sustain themselves, unlike a lot of other states. I mean, they have
Their
a
grid. They control their grid.
Yeah, I mean, they got full control of a lot of that, and so I mean, they could do that, and I wonder how much that's going to play into effect of the federal government wanting to push this issue against Texas, knowing that they have the resources and the infrastructure and everything to withdraw if they wanted to do
and it's
that.
actively on the minds of the citizens.
Yeah,
right?
it is, absolutely.
This is a ballot question next year.
Yep.
I mean, it would be a terrible game of chicken.
It really would.
Saddle effing Tramp says this leaked audio is straight out of a Grissom or Clancy novel. Is this real life? It's nuts. I'm not sure I have enough popcorn for this ish show. My friends, if you haven't and you have the ability to do so, listen to the full 10 minutes. I mean, around 3 minutes and 45 seconds, he says, what if they steal the election again?
Again.
This is a guy who's like, very powerful people want you to drop out of the race. We're gonna find a way to pay you money. Listen, what if they steal the election again? Mm-hmm. So at the very least, some people are saying, oh, this proves the election was stolen. No. It proves that very powerful individuals who are pulling the strings behind the scenes believe it was.
Correct.
Yeah.
So whatever you're hearing in media at Fox News, this is an establishment guy saying, we don't want you to run. So this is someone who doesn't like Trump, rhino establishment Republican. They think the election was stolen, despite, Fox News and other corporate, conservatives being like, no.
Perhaps the news is in on it.
Yeah, perhaps the news
Spoiler.
is it. Mega Mikey says, we talk about Occam's razor regarding the simplest solutions is the correct one, but this isn't that. There's another phrase that's very relevant to this leaked audio and politics. The truth is often stranger than fiction. It's not so much that the simple solution tends to be correct. It's that the solution that makes the least amount of assumptions tends to be correct. And that makes a bit more sense when you think about it. Conspiracy Cleaning says, Kari Lake's daughter had her brakes fail in her car shortly after this. Look it up. She's talked about it before. So what, this is like at some point last year, her daughter's brakes failed? Kari Lake tweeted, my brakes are working and I'm not suicidal. Yeah. That was in July of last year.
Wow.
Didn't she mention this as well?
I don't know.
Mention
her daughter's brakes?
No, mention that she was offered a bribe to get out of the race.
She did.
Yeah,
she has
yeah.
mentioned this.
Yep.
This is the first time the audio came out. So she has
Right.
mentioned the
'Cause
story before.
People told her that she was like, people were like, she's lying.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or exaggerating or whatever. And then you hear this and it's like, I don't think she did it justice in terms of telling just how chilling this conversation really was. She kind of downplayed it, if anything, when you actually hear the audio.
If she said a prominent Republican came to me and offered me a lucrative do-nothing job to bow out of politics and take the cash, and I told him to publicly expose these people, and he responded he would be killed if he did, she didn't say that.
No.
And the funny thing is, when I first saw the story popping up, I listened to the audio. The first thing I see is I see the audio, I listen to it, and I go, holy crap, this guy says he would be car bombed? Then I Google search it to look at all the various sources in their take. None of them are mentioning that this guy thought he would be assassinated if he was found out to have exposed to this. I will say this, the luckiest thing for him right now is that the audio was released.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Because now that he's on video in the recording saying my car will blow up, it's less likely to happen. Because you never know with the Epstein stuff. I mean, come on. They might just be like, well, yikes. All right, let's grab some more super chats. What do we got here? Let's see. Matthew Schneider says, Trump 2024 beat Nikki Hillary. Go Ultra MAGA. Ka-maga maga. I used AI a long time ago, and I told it to render Super Saiyan Trump, and it made an anime version of Trump with Spike.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so we made a t-shirt that says Ka-maga maga instead of Kamehameha, for those that know Dragon Ball Z.
It's hilarious.
Esoteric anime fan. I don't know. Millennial guys know what Dragon Ball Z is.
Nikki Hillary.
Dragon Ball Z was like all the rage for at least
It's like
part of my
the
childhood.
most popular show in the world. All right. Jake says, Tim, the term you are looking for to describe Democrats as Machiavellian totalitarians. I mean, that works too.
That's interesting.
I'll
I
take
like
it.
Yeah.
What have we here? We'll grab some more. Brian Rich says, hi, Tim. Operation Chaos was Rush Limbaugh telling Republicans to switch to Democrats in 2008 and vote for Hillary to draw out primary with Obama, go Trump. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I think that's scumbaggery. But I get it. It's a big, dirty game of politics. Not a fan. Everyone's going to try and exploit everybody else to steal power. It's brutal. We need a better culture. We need honor and integrity. Too many weak men in this country.
Amen to that.
Bill Hughes says, what if Biden federalizes the Texas National Guard out of the control of Texas? They've already discussed doing that. If they declared that, it may actually be the fastest path towards civil war. Yeah. So we're concerned about how it could be that Texas and CBP end up in a confrontation, that National Guard and CBP are fighting. No idea. I don't see a reason for CBP to go and confront an armed guardsman. I don't see a reason for the guard to go up to the CBP guys and fight them. The CBP has already been expelled. However, if Biden declares all of those armed National Guardsmen now work for him, they're going to be like, no, that's crazy. And that's when things will get really wild. Imagine if some of the guardsmen say, okay, not every guardsman's going to be a Republican.
Mm-hmm. That's
It's going to get real crazy.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Andrew Goodman says, please get Kari Lake back on IRL ASAP. We would always love to have Kari Lake back on IRL, and we will see what we can do.
I liked when she was here. I don't remember when it was, but Brett Dasvik, who does Pop Culture Crisis, said he walked into a room and she was there. And the way she greeted him was like as if she was like a suburban mom welcoming her into his home. Like she just has so much like warmth and everything. And he's like, I work here. Like, this is where I hang out. And she's welcoming me to like our space. But it was very nice.
That's very sweet.
Yeah, it was such a great description.
All right. Vilhans Brazil says, what if that was all AI done by Lake and the Democrats to make the Republicans look evil? And the only one that people can elect is Lake because they couldn't buy her off. I was thinking about it, the fear that it's deepfake stuff, but the conversation's too complicated for it to be AI. And apparently news outlets have reached out to others and confirmed that it's him speaking. So, you never know, man. What if the AI is taken over and is doing all of this? Kari Lake was kidnapped months ago, and there's a robot that has taken her place.
Just to come on IRL and prove that she's not kidnapped.
True. You guys want to know?
She's just on that ship.
You want to know the scariest?
She's going to be at Alpha Centauri soon.
The scariest scenario in AI? I remember several years ago, people on Twitter were Google searching photos and videos of armored vehicles, military operations. Then they were all hashtagging some fake city. Whoa, I can't believe this is happening. Look at this. Here's another video. What's going on? And so everyone's in on the joke. Find a random clip of military action and make it seem like there's a mass mobilization occurring, and some people fell for it. Mm-hmm. What would happen if a fake political candidate was created using deepfake technology? Wow. People start seeing speeches. I mean, let's be honest. I have not seen Donald Trump in the flesh in 9 years. I went to a lot of his rallies, so I saw him speak many times. No, that's not 9 years is not correct. When was the last time I saw him?
I saw him in the flesh in December, if that helps.
Yeah, I saw him recently as well. So
I saw him at the White House Social Media Summit. I don't remember the last time I saw him physically in person. My point is this. To everybody who's listening right now, they've probably not seen him in the flesh since the last rally, if they even went to one. Mm-hmm. The average person probably has never seen him in the flesh. For all you know, Trump is an AI-generated guy, and it's all fake. And or Joe Biden or whatever.
Joe Biden's more believable with all the glitches.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. But imagine in the future.
Trump's hand like 2 years ago.
Oh, there you go.
A long time ago now.
It was a long time ago.
That's where we're headed with AI, though. That's really scary to think about that. That they could create. I mean, some of the. I was reading an article. I don't get on there, but I read an article. One of the top OnlyFans topic creators is an AI.
It's like AI girlfriend.
Yeah, it's not a real person.
So weird.
It's crazy.
I think that this AI-generated politician is another brilliant film idea.
Grim Wolf says, Tim always forgets about the Bundy Ranch standoff. No, I don't. We had Ammon Bundy on this show to break it all down for us. Yep. But I'm not sure I understand the difference between a small faction of guys fighting with the Bureau of Land Management versus an entire state sending its armed National Guard to strip the jurisdiction from federal agents. Those are very different things.
A very large state with a lot of resources and a lot of money.
I mean, what is Texas, the second largest or third largest?
Second, right?
Yeah, I think so. Behind Alaska.
No, is California really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I could be wrong.
You mean land mass?
Yeah.
It might even not be as. I mean, what is it like? California, Texas, New York. I thought California was.
Alaska's the largest.
Oh,
New York.
right. Yes.
Yeah.
Alaska, California, Texas. Which one?
Alaska, Texas, California,
Yeah,
Montana,
Wow.
and New Mexico.
Texas is second biggest.
Yeah.
Yowza. They got a lot of cows too. So they got a lot of beef to eat. They say wars are fought on a soldier's belly. So you got all those cows everywhere, man.
Yeah, but nobody knows what to do with cows, though.
What do you mean?
Texas
You eat them,
Rangers
cows.
do. They're doing
We
it.
got-
Ranchers
I got
do.
some biltong.
No, the ranchers do. No, I'm like imagining soldiers being like, there's a cow, I'll eat it.
Yeah.
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 Have you seen that show? It was like 1870. What is it?
1874.
1881 or whatever.
1884.
1884.
No. Why can we not remember this?
Because it's
1884.
Yeah. Isn't there like a scene where they're like, I guess we have to eat the horses?
Yeah. Absolutely. And people in West Virginia would know
they
what to
did
do
that
with
during the
Same-
Revolution,
those people in
too.
Texas would know what to do.
Yeah. I don't know.
People
what
in
to
New
do at all.
York. People in New York City.
1883.
1883.
Yeah, it's a
I
spin-off
don't know
of
how to do
Yellowstone.
anything.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Upstate
show.
New York would be okay.
I'm a huge John Dutton fan. I think he's a great guy for shutting down Montana to the outside people.
Agreed.
That's a bummer. They're canceling that show though.
I
know.
I'm really mad about it.
I would
But
love to see
what-
Beth
what-
one time in person just go off in Washington, D.C.
What did
Yes.
they call Dutton? A hicklib?
Maybe.
Yeah. I think Jack Basuppa was calling that. All right, everybody. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member to watch the uncensored members only show. It'll be posted on the front page. We'll be up in a few minutes, and you as members can join the Discord server, submit questions, and even call in to the show to talk to us and our guests. You'll be on the show. By becoming a member, you're basically supporting the entire operation, everything we do. And there's a reason why we don't do as many ad reads. For those of you that listen to a bunch of other podcasts, you may notice all of them will always insert crazy ads all the time, all over the place. In the audio version, we've got ads periodically. On the live show, I don't do shout outs. I don't do any hard reads on the YouTube live, which is the most and most of our viewership. And it's because you guys as members make it so we don't really have to. There is a reality. We could make substantially more money if I started. You know what they want me to do? These agents were like, Tim, do an ad read 1 minute in, do an ad read 15 minutes in, 30, 45. And I was like, no way, dude.
That sounds awful.
Breaking the conversation and be like, all right, let's move on to this. Before we do, let's talk about, I don't want to do it. So I appreciate everybody who is a member. You make it possible for us to just kind of do the show the way we do it. So smash that like button. Like I said, you can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Derek, do you want to shout anything out?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys and to the audience. These are real people, genuine, down to earth, definitely worth supporting. I'm running for Congress in West Virginia. If you're in West Virginia, check us out. You can go to my website, evansforwv.com. That's evans for wv.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, Derrick Evans for WV. So head on over there.
That's awesome. It's been fun having you here.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. It's been awesome.
Yeah. I'm Hannah Claire Brimelow. I'm a writer for SCNR.com. It's an awesome team. I hope you check out our work. You can see it on social media if you follow at Timcast News on X and Instagram. If you want to follow me personally, I'm on Instagram at hannahclaire.b and I'm on X at HCBrimelow. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Libby, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for having me on. I'm Libby Emmons. I'm the editor with The Post Millennial, and you can check out all the great work we're doing over there at thepostmillennial.com, and you can subscribe at thepostmillennial.com/subscribe. Thanks. And I'm a member of Timcast.
Nice. Didn't catch that. I was kind of like trying to swap the screens, and I missed out the last part there. So
I'm a member of Timcast.
yeah, there you go.
So if you want to be like Libby, you'd be a member.
Yeah, for real.
I am Serge.com. I am not cutting my hair. Stop telling me to cut my hair. I'm not going to do it. We'll see you in the after show.
We will see you all over at timcast.com in about 1 minute. Thanks for hanging out.